Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll bring to order the business meeting for the Oregon State Parks and Recreation Commission. I want to welcome everybody here today and thank you for braving the weather in some bad parts of the state. I hear it's not everywhere, but certainly Southern Oregon was facing some bad winds last night. And I just want to thank our staff and members from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde for a wonderful tour of Champoeg State Park yesterday. It was really, really cold, but also really fascinating to see some of the work that they're doing with prairie lands and also get to see a small snapshot of some of the history in this region, which is just incredible. So moving on, we'll go ahead and do introductions of the commission members. We will start down at the end with Commissioner Grasty.
I'm Steve Grasty. I'm the commissioner from Eastern Oregon.
Hi, my name is Betty Izumi, and I'm the commissioner from Portland.
Vicki Berger, Commissioner from the Salem area.
Lisa Sumption, Director of Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Liz Hill, Commissioner from Glide.
Joel Conder, Commissioner from the central part of the state.
Melissa Cribbins, Commissioner from Coos Bay.
Doug Durr, Commissioner from the North Coast of Oregon.
Oh,
and I'm Steve Shipsey. I'm counsel to the commission.
All right. So first up, we need to approve the September 2024 minutes. Does anybody have any edits or changes to the minutes from our last meeting? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a second from Commissioner Grasty. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next, we need to approve today's agenda. Are there any changes? We're good, Lisa? Okay, so it should be as written, no changes to the agenda. I will entertain a motion to move forward with the agenda as written.
I move that, or I make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Grasty. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Izumi, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the agenda is approved.
I will note that Chris did point out you have 24 items and 20 of them are action items, so no pressure.
Okay, we can do this. We can do this. Wonderful. Well, I did want to take the opportunity to welcome Marion County Commissioner Kevin Cameron here. He drove all the way up from Eugene this morning to be with us, and we are so grateful for you sharing your community with us. We've had a fun time so far. So if you wanted to come up and say a few words, please do.
Drove all the way up from the AOC conference. You're missing all your good
All
stuff
the
just to be with us.
Came all the way from Lane County to be in Marion County. Yeah. Chair Hill and members of the commission, thank you for inviting me to be here. And more importantly, thank you for coming to Marion County and touring Champoeg Park yesterday. I will say this, it is a beautiful place, and if the history, as you mentioned, Chair, the history, Marion County went all the way from into Canada, all the way down into the state of Oregon, and Champoeg has a fine history of what happened here in the Northwest, as we all know, a deciding vote that we are now speaking English instead of French in that park. But one of my best opportunities to explore that park is we do the last 2 years, I believe, we do an annual Marion County 5K run in the park. And we have a picnic with inviting all our employees and their families to go up there. And it's amazing how many people don't go there and see that beautiful place and the Frisbee golf and all the things that are there. So I just want to say thank you for the work that all of you do. Judge, good to see you. Yeah. That all you do for the state of Oregon. And I know we have many, many challenges within the state, as well as we do as a county in our parks and recreation. But it is probably one of the most important things that we can do for the citizens of Oregon and in Marion County is to get outdoors for our mental health and for our understanding of the things that are important to us. And I think that's why we all live in this beautiful state of Oregon, is the scenery that we get. And as a wildfire survivor in the 2020 wildfires, and Marion County and the things that we're doing to restore our parks, we have tremendous challenges ahead of us. And I know that you do as well as a commission. So I thank you for your service and for the tough decisions that you have to make for the future of Oregon. So thanks for having me.
Thank
to
you
see
so much.
Commissioner. Thank you.
Anybody? Thank you. Thank you very much. And I did go on last night and book Shampooey, so I'm booked for spring. So the kids are gonna have a blast. so.
And Commissioner Gamma, I think you, as county commission, you use the Butteville store a bit too, right? Yeah. Yeah, we had lunch
Yeah.
there
We did have
yesterday.
lunch.
and
I forgot to mention
exactly,
that.
Yeah,
That was wonderful.
great food.
All right, moving on to item number 3, director's update. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have public comment? Oh, excuse me. We do have public comment. I totally skipped over that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
So, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, we have one item of public comment. Frank Steves is online and he would like to do a 3-minute presentation. So Frank, if you would like to unmute, will that work? I know. Yeah, so if you would like to unmute, I will start the timer and you can share your screen and provide your public comment.
You all set?
Yes, go right ahead.
Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Chair Hill and other commissioners as well. Just really quick, I wanted to bring up some of the stuff that OPRD is doing up here in Troutdale. And I noticed it over the summer when I was doing this research into missing bollards. So as I did the research, I noticed they were missing right here at this location. And then also the impact of how many vehicles are on the route. So as you follow this down, you can see where the bollards were originally, and then how they're missing now on both sides of the river on the shared path. This is an example of how many people are on this route. In one day that I took for a point in time, I had 130 bikers and over 200 people on this route. And then I also had 7 vehicles. So this is the vehicles that are out there that day. And it just tells you how important the work is that OPRD is doing on Jordan Road up here in Troutdale. Since that time, I got to give kudos and shout out to all of the staff that OPRD that put up these bollards, as well as they put up a new reinforced bollard, as well as boulders. And then they also put up bollards further down so the pathway is a little more secure. Now, is this going to fix everything? No, but it's probably one of the major routes into the DSL, Forest Service, and then over the river back into Troutdale, which is critical to the whole network. So big kudos, big shout out, and these guys are really working really hard. So why does it matter? As I said, the transportation network is really integrated out here, and it's going to get even further along because we're going to connect the Sandy River to downtown Troutdale, which connects us to Gresham, and we're also the gateway to the gorge. Now, one of the major issues that I think you guys should look at from an agenda item is how OPRD is interacting with DSL. OPRD is working 3 times as hard to deal with the homeless situation up here. I think that Mr. Courtright would probably be your best source, but I think you should make that an agenda item and how you could collaborate on how you could possibly fix this situation. So that Troutdale and how we connect in the future in this area is going to be beneficial to the whole group as a whole. Feel free to peruse. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I attached all the information on the PowerPoint. And thank you so much for taking the time. I love where you guys are at. It's one of my favorite rides in the spring with the Monster Cookie ride. Shampooey is like a great spot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Okay. Do we have any other public comment, Katie?
No, that is it.
Okay.
Public comment. Thank you.
All All right, moving on to the director's update. Oh, Mitchell Point.
Guy, if you
Oh,
want to.
Guy.
Sorry. Guy's going to come up and do Mitchell Point first. And then Chris is going to do the Vietnam Memorial.
And Denise, do you know if the PowerPoint was added?
Yeah, I should have. The commissioner just needs to.
Chris will
Yeah,
go
I'll
first
go
with
ahead,
Vietnam Memorial and we'll get the,
Yep.
we'll get the
That's
pretty
right.
pictures for the next one.
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, and Chris Havel with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Here skipping ahead to item second bullet point under 3A on the director's update. This is just for your information. Just wanted to let you know that after several months of construction this year, the first phase of the Vietnam War Memorial will be dedicated this week at the State Capitol State Park. This is a $3.6 million project organized by the nonprofit Vietnam War Memorial Fund. They financed the memorial with a combination of private fundraising and public dollars allocated by the legislature. This phase of the work included a sculpture called Welcome Home by Portland artist Libby Carruth, as well as seating, walkways, and the primary feature of the memorial, granite obelisks bearing the name of the veterans from Oregon who fell during the Vietnam War. The subsequent phase would include other features following a plan that this commission approved in 2021. That phase is not yet funded and there's no schedule for that work yet. OPRD has contributed feedback and monitoring during this first phase of construction, but no funding. The project has deposited the required maintenance fund. For outside projects like this, administrative rule requires a 15% maintenance fund be deposited with the agency for ongoing work. And that, I just wanted to let you know that that was going on and the dedication is this Friday at 2.
2 o'clock.
So, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should have talked slower. Are you good?
Slower.
Yeah, yeah.
slower.
Fingers crossed. Thanks for the patience.
Yeah.
So Chair Hill, Director Assumption, other members of the commission, for the record, Guy Rodriguez, I'm the Valley Region Director. I'm going to be providing a brief update on the Mitchell Point Tunnel project on the historic Columbia River Highway. So just for some context on the broader project area, this is the entire Columbia River Highway location. You'll see the project location, Mitchell Point right there in the middle. So the historic highway spans from Troutdale all the way to the Dalles. It's completed in different trail types. Some is bike pedestrian only and some is open to vehicular traffic. And the Mitchell Point Tunnel was considered to be the most complex and challenging project location along this entire section. So it's a pretty significant achievement. The project's been going underway for about 3 years now and is near completion. There we go. So a little bit about the history. So here's a photograph of the historic tunnel, which was part of the original construction in 1915. It was closed in 1953, so operated for a number of decades and destroyed with the development of the interstate through the Columbia River Gorge in 1966. So over the course of the last 20 years or so, working collaboratively with the Department of Transportation, U.S. Forest Service, various counties and municipalities to restore the historic highway to be utilized for recreation. So the new tunnel construction project started in 21 and is nearing completion here in the end of 2024. Pretty significant project, as I mentioned, in terms of funding. So federal land access program funding of about 31 million just for this one specific section due to the technical complexities. And we have a very fun, entertaining video for you to watch that hopefully will wow you a little bit.
Will you email the link to that sometime?
You bet.
Thanks.
Oh, no, it's not hooked up.
What's that? Okay.
Like a pro,
Technical
Daniel. Like a pro.
difficulties. Hey, this technology wonder.
Chris is sitting smiling going, I'm not the one doing it.
Yeah.
My fingers are itching a little bit. But
We had a speaker at our national conference that talked about, just generational and succession planning and things like that, and introduced a thing called struggle time, where you just got to let people struggle while they,
Here we
this
go.
is struggle time at its best. And I can see this one squirming going. Struggle time is good for us. We
Any
learn.
updates to share, Chris?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Drinking warm water before bed.
We're
that's on the record now. I don't know what it means.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You sounded different.
Yep. Restrooms are out that door. And
Refreshments in the back.
Yep.
Entertainment right here. Everyone else back there is like, I'm glad it's them first.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well done.
Look at that, teamwork.
Mitchell Point is 5 miles west of Hood River. It's just huge basalt cliffs. It's a point that sticks out, so you have to kind of go around it on I-84, but yet you can see in both directions so far down the Columbia.
Mitchell Point was that tunnel that was the most attractive thing that visitors to the area wanted to see. Everybody wanted to know, where's that?
They had to destroy the original to make this freeway.
The interstate came along, and so there were segments of the highway that were abandoned in a sense. They were just left to deteriorate. And so trying to make sure that over time, they didn't deteriorate too bad because of the plans we had for a state trail.
These trails will provide excellent recreation opportunities for Oregonians of all ages to enjoy.
The initial goal was an individual could get on a bike in Troutdale and ride all the way to the Dalles without having to utilize I-84.
This is, going to connect and allow people to go, however far you want to go from Troutdale.
Es una aventura. No sé cuántas horas te tomaría, ¿no? Pero sería una aventura. Y en bicicleta yo pienso que sí lo haces, vas y vienes, ¿no? Pero estaría padrísimo. Y es súper bonito y qué bueno si van a hacer este proyecto.
I don't know that I'll be able to bike all the way from Troutdale to the Dalles, but I can do it in segments. The Mitchell Point Tunnel and the section out of Hood River heading west were saved for last because those were the two most difficult.
So we were working between Mitchell Spur and I-84 on this rock cliff, and it's all made out of basalt. And so in order to do a tunnel, you need to get rock information, the type of rock, how hard is it, how strong is it.
I was responsible for the design of the walls on the project. So where we're standing now, behind me, there'll be a trail that's leading up to a tunnel that will go through Mitchell Point. The new tunnel will be modern on the inside. Everything will be robust, modern, reinforced concrete. But on the outside, the facing will all be similar stonework to what's been used historically in the gorge.
You know, I was once asked, what's the difference between renovation and restoration? Renovation is to renew. In some senses, to make better. Restoration is to restore, so that people could walk back in time to 1915 and see those same views.
Good infrastructure is the key to creating livable communities. And good infrastructure that respects our history is even better.
You'll see that there's portal openings, small windows that are arched throughout the railing. That's similar to the historic railings, as well as the new railings that will be along the full length of the trail.
I had a table that I would set up. So then I'd look out, I'd see the majestic Columbia, and I'd see just all the transportation, the train that went by all the time, and the barges and the airplanes and cars. It's like, wow, this is just an amazing thoroughfare.
Whatever comes to you in visiting a special place like this, what I want for most people is to have that experience, to get underserved communities the opportunity.
Porque aunque tengan muchos años viviendo mucha gente aquí, no conoce lugares. Y ahí los llevas y esto, y pues dice, wow, tantos años de vivir aquí y no lo había conocido. Pues es maravilloso.
Once it's open, my family is going to go. We're going to check it out. Absolutely.
Looking back on the project, I feel really fortunate to have been a part of it and provide opportunities for people to connect with the scenic area as well as the history of the region.
Just waiting for the moment that I can visit and see that view that so many others before me got to see before it was removed.
It's an amazing project, an amazing part of our legacy, as the Mitchell Point Tunnel is the key piece to all 73 miles of historic highway being fully restored. I can't wait and excited to join you on a ride when we put it all together.
All right, so that was just a better overview than I would have been able to provide that Department of Transportation put together. So I'm afraid to go back to the PowerPoint, but just wanted to be available for any questions. This is the segment of the historic highway that they said that just couldn't be done. Nobody expected it over 25 years due to its complexity. So to actually be here today, after it's nearing completion is a pretty special moment in time for that community and the communities that it connects. So there are a couple of pictures on that presentation if Daniel can get back to it of the completed project, but just want to be available for questions.
Commissioner Grassi.
So do you know, is when we get all done, will somebody have done a video on the tunnel construction itself? Which seems like it'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, ODOT has been doing a great job documenting the construction progress, not only for the Mitchell Point section, but for every other segment that's been completed. And so I would assume that we'd be working with OPB or some other partnership to put together a documentary for it.
Commissioner Izumi?
Yeah, as a cyclist, this is so exciting to me. So is this the last section then to be able to ride from Troutdale to the Dells without having to get on the freeway?
There's going to be one more section that we're looking at funding for to take Mitchell Point into Hood River on the western side of town. But this is definitely the most expensive and costly section. So I don't want to say we're on like the final home stretch, but we're darn close.
Thank you.
So here's a picture of the western entrance. So you can see the rock work there and the detail that was provided along with what inside the tunnel is going to look like. This is actually after it's been completed with the Shot Creek siding. There's 5 arched windows that you can easily see from down below, from anywhere on the water, and then obviously the Washington side. And then the east entrance or portal to the tunnel.
Are those entrances similar to what the original ones were, or they're just?
Similar in the terms of size and scale. There's a lot more detail associated to this. Part of the original construction didn't provide the elaborate rock work around the entrances. Yep. And the plaza, which is on the west side. And then, as I mentioned, it's a pretty substantial partnership between the U.S. Forest Service, Oregon Department of Transportation as the lead, various counties, Travel Oregon, the Friends of the Historic Highway, as well as the Friends of the Columbia River Gorge. So, any other questions?
I was wondering, once it's done, who's going to maintain this? Where's the funding coming from?
Oh, it's a great question. It's a collaborative partnership right now between Oregon State Parks and Oregon Department of Transportation. So State Parks does the day-to-day routine maintenance, such as leaf blowing, rule enforcement, and light maintenance if there's smaller rocks and things like that. If there's any major rehabilitation that's needed or necessary along the corridor, ODOT takes the lead in that regard.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Nice job.
We have Katie up next for our legislative update.
Okay, cool. Great. Then Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 3B, the legislative update. We just wanted to give you a quick update as we were preparing for the legislative session to start in January. We have 3 proactive pieces of legislation that you approved in April that we're still working toward moving forward. We have drafts that have been drafted, and we are, let's make sure I can move this. Moving forward with having them, sorry. Having them move forward. There we go. The 3 drafts that we have, the first one is around employee address disclosure. This was the one that we talked about that our employees sometimes engage with law enforcement with the nature of their work when they're enforcing our administrative rules and issuing violations, or when they call law enforcement because someone violates the law. And often law enforcement will then ask for their ID or gets their information, and it's their home addresses that are entered into the system. And so information will go to their home addresses. There's a program within DMV that offers the option of exchanging your home address for your work address. It's completely voluntary on the part of the employee. So this just offers that to our employees, but we would need to change the statute to allow OPRD employees to participate in that program. The second one is looking at printing and procurement. We're looking at this as an agency efficiency legislation. Right now, with printing, we are required to go through DAS printing and distribution as the broker for all of our printing projects, whether or not they have the capability of actually printing those items. We still need to go through DAS and pay a brokerage fee. So this would exempt us from that requirement for items that are for outdoor recreation and historic preservation type items. So it just adds that exemption into statute. And then around procurement, it would add some exemptions. It's not a full exemption for procurement. We were hoping to get a full exemption, and that's not in there currently. We will look at working to make some amendments, but it is a start to putting into statute some of the exceptions that we've received through negotiation with DAS. But it is a start to some of the exceptions and moving towards some exemptions in statute. And then the final legislative concept is around ocean shore permitting. It addresses 3 of the issues that we find with the ocean shore permits that are the regulatory permits that we deal with on the ocean shore. It would create a general authorization permit for the simpler, smaller projects that would make them go more smoothly. It matches much of the DSL permitting processes. So it would allow us to have a more flexible, extended timeline for review of permits so that we're not denying permits that when the clock runs out. And then it would allow the fees to be set in rule. Currently, there is almost a one-size-fits-all fee that for small projects doesn't work, and for large projects isn't great. So this would allow that flexibility for fees in rule, which DSL received in recently. So that is the concepts. Were there questions on the legislative concepts?
I have a question on process.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Berger.
Yeah, Katie, these concepts, are they introduced then as agency bills and assigned to committee? Is that the process?
Correct. We believe that would be the process. In the past, that has been the process. Last session, it was not. So that's where I hesitate slightly.
Some of this last one particularly is really important. And waiting 2 more years, it just puts us way back. Some of these we've seen before, but this one has a certain emergency sense to it. And I would be, willing to help in any way to get this to a committee and emphasize its importance to the state, really, not just us as an agency, but to stakeholders all along the coast. And there is a coastal coalition of legislators who certainly would be interested in seeing this move forward. So
we're in the final processes of review within the governor's office and DAS for approval to move forward. And typically then they become introduced on behalf of, by the governor on behalf of the agency. During the first term of the governor's, or the first session that the governor was in office, that's not the way that it worked. So then we did find that we had permission to find a legislator, and we would go through that process. So it would be one of those 2 options, as long as we have approval from the governor's office to move forward with the legislation.
this one, I feel a sense of urgency about this one.
When they use you.
Well, we don't have to know anybody down there. Kevin Cameron laughed. That's why you laughed.
And then I did want to just do a quick update on some of the anticipated legislative issues that we're planning or hearing that will likely happen. Recreational immunity, we've talked a lot about that in the past. During the last legislative session, there was a short-term bill that passed with a sunset that will expire in 2025. There was a work group passed that worked during the interim to try to find a longer term solution. It doesn't seem like the work group continued meeting during the interim or made a lot of forward progress. But we do understand that Senator Przansky will most likely introduce legislation to just repeal the sunset. So the bill that did resolve the issue that many of the local governments were having and many of the concerns that we had would move forward. And that would be a great solution if that were to move forward. And there is a coalition working to help pursue that legislation. There is
Katie, do we have a sense, are other entities like AOC and others involved in that?
yes, LOC, it's on their legislative agenda, and there is definitely a coalition working in support of that option.
Anything that we can do as a commission to lend a voice to how important this issue is to be resolved is let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. There's another bill that the Oregon Recreation and Parks Association is working to support for abandoned and the towing industry. Abandoned RV disposal fees. It's been a number of different sessions. There have been proposals. This one seems to have some opportunity. It would add a fee to RV registration, licensing and registration to fund RV disposals on public property. And then we could access those funds when we have abandoned or disposed RVs. So we'll see where that one goes. And then just as many of you are probably aware, one of the major issues that we'll be watching and that will move forward for consideration is a transportation package funding. So that will be one of those things that weighs heavy on the legislature about where they go with transportation funding. Are there any questions on the upcoming legislative session? Great. Well, we will continue to monitor and keep you apprised as the session moves forward.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 4, the budget. Courtney, online. Oh, it'll be right here.
Got it working. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Courtney Zarzef. I'm here to talk about item 4A. It is the revenue update for the 25-27 biennium. And this is LB Yaki Jones. She is our revenue analyst, fairly new revenue analyst, but has come on very quickly. And she is here to support and also answer any questions that you have about revenue as we go through this. So I have sent out a handout that's kind of the foundational background in an effort to allow me to go through the first handful of these slides very quickly. Also, I provided the actual printouts of the handout. So if you have any questions about the first handful of slides, please let me know. But those are just the background details of it. I'm going to actually start on slide 7, which is the one you see up here. So this is the overall breakdown of the 25-27 revenue budget. And so you can see how it is broken down percentage-wise between all the different funds that we have coming in, primarily looking at the other funds and lottery funds. Today, we're going to heavily focus on other funds and what makes up other funds, because really it is the amount we can control. We're going to get heavy into the details on some challenges that we are looking at facing in the 25-27, but the first foundational element is what makes up other funds? It's 28% of our available revenue coming into the current biennium. And really what makes up that amount is the heavily park user fees, some ODOT transfers, specified revenue, and miscellaneous revenue. But you can see park user fees is the biggest chunk, the 50% of that. We will get more into this, but the outer ring there really shows the overall segmentation of each of those bigger amounts. So overnight, day use, and reservation are represented in that outer ring respectively. So you can kind of see the makeup of each of those. The other thing I just want to point out before we get further into the details of it is, if you were here for a long time, you've probably heard from my predecessor about the source. You used to describe it as the color of money, which is a great way to think about it too. I like to use the revenue or the metaphor of the river. You have a different source and a destination of the water that flows through. So we can talk about revenue in the same way, the source of the money that's coming in, but it's going to go through different tributaries and different segments, and it's going to be destined for an actual program that it will be used for. So I want to make that distinction because we're going to talk about it in the way of the destination that the revenue is used for primarily today. So if you're looking at the OPRD revenue river, this is what it looks like.
Blood.
Everything on the left is the source of the revenue. So where the revenue actually comes from. And then everything on the right is the destination or the program that the revenue is directed to. So you can see specifically on the upper right-hand side over there is the different programs that are housed under OPRD. So that's the local government grant program and a handful of other programs. One specific thing to note here is that revenue is directly, or the expenditures are directly dependent on the revenue that's brought in. And what I mean by that is the local government grant program is not going to hand out money that we are not bringing into that program. It's a little bit different when we're looking at the bottom right, which is the operational or non-dedicated funds. We employ people. We have specific expenditures that we have said are the standard for the parks to meet to be able to withhold our base budget of running the parks. Our revenue should meet with that, but it's not fully dependent on that revenue. So that is the 241 million that you see in the bottom right. And then you can also see we're holding 10 million as a salary pot. And then there's 28.4 million left as that non-dedicated ending balance. We try to keep that at bare minimum 25 million. But specifically what I want to point out, I don't know if we can see my mouse here, but this non-dedicated amount 28.4 started over here on the right. Thank you. Started over here on the left at the 65.8 million on that non-dedicated beginning balance up top on the upper left. Ideally, those would stay the same or get bigger. And that's what we're going to go into in the coming slides.
In other words, we're bleeding money.
We're cut money. We're cut a little bit, maybe not bleeding fully. This next slide is just another representation of the right-hand side. So we're talking about where the revenue is destined for and how it will be used. So you can see that we have about 68% is for non-dedicated operations. This is how the parks is actually run, the bulk of our people that we pay for, projects and things like that. Local government grant program, federal funded programs, ATV, debt service, trust and dedicated, and RB. So this shows the same thing, just in a different depiction. This is just the right-hand side of that revenue river. All right, all of that background to kind of be able to specifically talk about our trends and what we're seeing and kind of what the challenges we're working to meet for the coming biennium. So this graph pretty much shows a trend of revenue in past biennium, current biennium, and projected future biennium. Please keep in mind, the further you project out, the cloudier forecasts tend to get. But we always want to keep the next biennium in mind. So we're working to make a more sustainable budget. So the dark green here is representing the non-dedicated revenue that we talked about. So the actual operational revenue. The lighter green up top is representing the beginning balance. So what's left over from the previous biennium that we are able to use as available revenue for that current biennium that's represented there. Next is this bar kind of represents the CSL expenditures. You guys heard about this in June. And then in July, we talked about the LAB, or our projected total budget, which includes the POPs. So the CSL is our base budget. And then that red line notates the total budget, which is all the POPs added on to it. Some of these POPs are one-time POPs, and some of them are continuous POPs that will end up being added to the next biennium's base budget.
Which breaks my memory, what's CSL?
CSL current service level. That's kind of our base budget. It's what we spent last biennium plus inflation.
This is great, right?
Huh?
Aren't they amazing?
Thank you. Thank you. I love it when people love graphs as much as I do. Really, this though is where we're focusing going forward. So there's the 23-25 biennium. You can see that the CSL, I guess real quick to go back, the CSL line should fit fairly squarely within the revenue that's coming in, within the dark green bars. Ideally, that's what we would want to see. We have seen that in the past, and you can see that going forward, it is looking to go above the dark green line. Why did that happen? Why are we where we are now? It was not one thing. It was not neglect or irresponsibility or anything like that. It was the perfect storm of events that kind of happened all together at one time. For Measure 76, we were required we hit the threshold. We were giving 12% to the local government grant program. Now we're required to give 25% to that. So we hit that amount this biennium. We had to give a look back for last biennium. We also were required to give an additional 17.7 million this biennium. All of that comes out of what we have been using traditionally as our operational non-dedicated revenue. So the 17 million, that number 2 line item there, is a one-time hit, but the 13% will be ongoing going forward that used to be used in the non-dedicated operational. We also had a lot of POPs this biennium, and a good amount of them were continuous POPs. So some of them were one-time, like our FIP. Some of them were adding seasonals and adding months, and some.
Courtney, can you spell out FIP and some of the acronyms?
Yeah.
Thank you.
FIP is Facility Improvement Program. Thank you very much for the reminder. When I first started, I had no idea, and now I do with her.
We don't use the terms every day, so it's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder.
POPs.
And POPs are a policy option package. Thank you. And they are added in after our budget. And so it is something that we put together that we would like to add into our budget. Usually programs or adding people or something like that. And then, so we had some continuous POPs, and then this biennium, we've also had some pretty high COLAs. So 6% each year have been added to personal services. And some lesser contributing factors, we've had some park closures because of the facility improvement. That is good. We want to see that, and we want to see them improving. They will add to the revenue next biennium, but this biennium, a lot of them have been closed. We've also seen some flat revenue in areas. And again, this isn't because people don't want to go there. It's because we are full in our overnight and our campsites, that we have so many people that want to go there that we currently don't have space. And then we've had pay equity. DAS went through all agencies and did a pay equity assessment. It's about $1 million for parks, so it's not too much, but it's a smaller contributing factor. So all of these have kind of led to the position that we're in right now. So what LB and I have been heavily focusing on and having lots of conversations about is this orange segment right here. How do we bring our revenue up to meet the expenditure need that we have said costs our agency to be able to run? What is that amount? 34 million. So we're going to go through in just as a quick reminder, what are other funds? What are the levers we can pull? What are the decisions we can make in order to increase that revenue to meet that $34 million need? Just as a reminder, this is the composition of it. We're focusing right now heavily on the park user fees because in the short term, this is the area that we have as much control as we can have over. And we want to do an assessment, or we have done assessment on what are the levers that we have to be able to twist and turn and pull, or that maybe haven't been turned in a while to be able to increase that revenue. So here we have the breakdown. We have about 81% for overnight revenue, 14% for day use, and 5% of that park user fees revenue comes from each of those segments. In overnight, the things we can do to be able to increase that are add sites to the campground. We can add campgrounds, maybe. It's very hard to add campgrounds and sometimes it's not possible. Or we can increase the fees. I'll go through these more specifically in a minute, but just as a specific call out. In day use, we've identified that we can increase the number of parks we currently charge at. We can add potentially maybe a seasonal increase in fees. Maybe we charge a little bit more in the summer than we do in the winter time. We can add a flat rate increase overall. So currently they're at $5. We can increase that amount. Or we can start thinking about maybe a level of service increase. What could that potentially look like? There are parks where people go there all day long, park their boat, park their car all day long. And there are parks where people go there for half an hour. Maybe we're starting to think about a level of service type fee. For reservation, we can increase the fee, or we can have some kind of a dynamic fee. So maybe we charge a little bit more if they are booking 6 months in advance as opposed to booking the week of or the week before. We've done some of that already, and so real quick, I'm going to go over that. We've increased the reservation fee. It used to be $8, it's now $10. That green line indicates what it would be, our forecast would be if we would have kept it at $8, and the green bars behind it indicate the $10 change. That total difference is $1.7 million increase. And then just a few notes about the reservation fee. OPRD, it depends on the contract with the rec hub that we use, but OPRD retains about $2 to $8 per transaction, depending on the transaction and depending where we are at with the vendor in the contract.
So if I can,
Please.
did you just answer the question of what's the projection of increased revenue from camping? Our new fees, if you would.
That's next.
Okay.
He's getting
Yeah,
there.
thank you. That's a great question to segue into this. So we, as Commissioner Grassley pointed out, we have increased fees for camping, $3 for tents, $4 for RV, and $5 for yurts and cabins. So this is just a callback reminder of what those fees were and where they are now. This is what that difference ends up looking like. So if we would have had no increase in fees, we were originally projecting about $56 million in 25-27. And with the increase, we're projecting about $62 million. So a $6 million increase with those fees. Of note, I just like to point this out. Originally in 1990, when we had our full hookup site, we were charging $17 for that amount. With the changes, we're charging $34. But if in 1990, $17 is in today's money with inflation is $41. So I just like to kind of set that base and kind of set that tone for we're increasing our fees, but we're not keeping up with the cost of everything in our fees. So that puts us at, with those two differences, that puts us at $26 million. And that puts us looking at the last amount or our last levers to pull, which is day use fees. In day use fees, these are the current availability offers that we have for people to be able to purchase. We have a $5 daily parking permit, a 24-month 2-year pass, and a 12-month and annual $30 pass. Some of these will change with the out of state coming in. We have about 20% of, that says 14%. That was, we re-looked at that, and it's actually 20% of online purchasers for the $30 annual pass are from out of state. So that will change a little bit in the future, but this is on the left is the graph of how those 3 segments kind of work out, with the greatest being the daily parking permit. Real quick, just of note, as we are talking about internally, what we can change, just a quick reminder, we can increase the number of parks, a seasonal increase of fees, a flat rate increase of fees, and a level of service. So in thinking about that, these are our current parks that we are charging at. We charge at 25 parks. We have 361 sites. Some of those sites we'll never charge at because they're things like scenic overlooks and stuff like that that just are not feasible or fair to charge at. But even if you bring that number down to 250-ish, we are charging at 10% of that amount. So that's something that is in conversations and being considered, and how do we put some kind of a metric to what fees and where we start charging. Also, we've noticed compliance is a pretty big issue. From what we are able to calculate from the data we have calculated we're getting about $1 per car. We estimate about 4 people per car on average, because we get a lot of tour buses in too, so about 4 people per car. So we're looking at about 26 cents per visitor. These are only at the parks that we're charging at, so it doesn't count the expenditures that we have to pay for that are parks that are not fee parks. So 26 cents or $1 per car when we charge $5 per car. We would like to see that increase. We're never going to get $5 per car because we have the annual passes and we just don't have, that's not feasible, but I'd like to see it higher than $1.
People aren't paying.
People aren't paying either.
People aren't paying.
Go ahead, Commissioner
What did
Grassi.
you say?
I said, so people aren't paying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing to note is that we offer the annual pass and the 24-month pass. We are the only state that offers the 24-month pass. So we lose $20 per $20, quick math. Yeah. $10, 30
$10
plus
year.
30, $10 per person that buys the 24-month pass. So a thought of potentially, do we go with what the industry standard is across other states, which is just the annual pass? Yeah.
Boy, my grandson had just died.
Yes, I know. I always get the
Christmas
24 month too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a significant additional administrative burden by doing that?
I think that we would have some things, like we have printed a lot of them. We have some contracts with the printing vendors. I don't think it's a super significant amount. We'd have to, of course, grandfather in the ones that are already in now. But we're also in conversations about looking at potential other options also for the 24 month.
Thanks.
And then I just wanted to point out, I don't have my notes section right here, but this is Silver Falls, Ecola, right? And Smith Rock. These are just pointing out our biggest day use fee parks that we see right now that bring in the biggest revenue. Thank you. So we have Smith Rock, Ecola, Rooster Rock, and Fort Stevens. And Silver Falls. Silver Falls is definitely our biggest day use fee park. And then lastly, these stars indicate our opportunity parks where we don't currently charge, but we see a pretty high visitation at those parks. Yeah, on the coast, that's, Tolovana, Sunset Bay, Harris Beach, by Bend, that's Pilot Butte, Valley of the Rogue, and Wallowa Lake. I always have. So what does that mean for this 26.3 million that we need to get to, and where are we now? And that is kind of the crux and the point of the presentation here today, is just to let you all know the conversations that we're having and how we're planning to meet a lot of these challenges. Right now, we've presented this to the exec team. LB and I have kind of done the rounds of talking to all of the managers and doing the same or a very similar presentation. We're gauging manager input on day use. The Valley is a high day use area, so just getting a lot of input on what is feasible in terms of getting higher compliance. What are some low effort things we can do to get higher compliance, and how can we and IT and other groups support those managers to be able to do that? And then also just communication with our LFO exec, the commission, the public, our staff, you guys here on where we are and kind of the goals we're getting to. LB and I have also been working up feverishly a lot of scenarios so that exec and other groups can work out if that will be feasible also, and putting actual money to that. So that's the next step. Any questions? This was a lot of information.
This is the best
Yeah.
study.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, and Courtney, tell everyone how long you've been here.
A year.
LB, how long have you been here?
8 weeks.
Yeah, it has been phenomenal when Courtney didn't know what all the acronyms were and she came from private sector, trying to figure out how all this works and having them put their lens and I think at one point I said, if you can explain it to a 5-year-old or like a 95-year-old grandmother, like we're golden, like this is it. And you guys have taken it over the top. Like it is so easily understandable and so much nicer to understand where we are, why we are, how we are, and where we need to go.
1000%. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am particularly glad for this last slide, because this information, it's good for us, but I can't impact it except in rulemaking over fees or something.
Yeah.
But those people on the ground who have to explain why the fees went up, or what other things might we do that don't involve the low-hanging fruit thing, these are the people we really need to reach.
Absolutely.
With this information and get their help and buy-in, because they're on the ground when the public walks into our park and says, what?
Any other?
Oh,
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for this really great presentation and all of your work. I'm wondering about enforcement, and when somebody doesn't pay, do they get a ticket?
So, I mean, there's a couple of things here, right? If there isn't presence and people don't pay, I mean, we just don't have enough people to go around to do that. But I think creating better signage, I mean, we've talked about, could there be QR codes? Could be easier ways to pay? Could we make it a little bit more accessible for folks to pay? Sometimes people get there and like, I don't have cash. I don't have, I just want to pay on my, those kinds of things. So I think, I don't remember which park, I'm looking back to JR and Dennis, but when we actually hired a seasonal one summer to be in the booth and in the parking lot, I mean, we went up significantly because there was someone there. And we've gone away from that. The pandemic, we pretty much closed the booths, took them out. And so there isn't that same ranger presence.
I think,
And I don't, the numbers are hard to tell because when we say, okay, well, only 5% are paying, we're also using car counters and we're using estimates, and it's not completely accurate. So my guess is it's a little bit higher, but it's the data we have to use. And there's no good way, unless there's a human standing there counting every person who comes into that park and how many people are on that tour bus. And so it's a good baseline, and it's good for us to remind ourselves like this might be an easy thing to focus on compliance and getting that message.
Yeah, I think that during the pandemic, there was a sense that, oh, there's nobody here, and then people just forget to bring cash. Sometimes you don't have cell reception to be able to get parking permits or, so I think that reminding people again that this is how we fund our parks and that it's really important to pay the, very modest fee.
Yeah.
I guess I can, sure. I'm not sure if I have a specific comment. I'll say that was an exceptional, clear, well-organized, and slightly depressing presentation.
Oh.
And I appreciate it all because it was really, really very helpful. And I think that I agree with everything my fellow commissioners here are saying. I mean, I think working with the managers on the ground to come up with different solutions. Each park is a little different, I think. The people there, the constituency there is a little different. The realities of whether we have cell access and so forth, how long people are staying. And so I envision, as this moves forward, a pretty fine-tuned, maybe variegated approach that's kind of specific to what we're hearing from managers on the ground. I know that on the coast, and especially the North Coast where I'm from, I hear a lot of comments from the public about why don't, especially these parks that have sort of overflowing parking lots, all, a longer window every year. Aren't there options for cultivating those for fees, which would hopefully generate revenue, but also I think the residents imply kind of place some limits on that as well. At the same time, I've spoken out in these sessions about the importance of not creating unreasonable barriers to access for people. So it's very difficult because generally speaking, I'm all in favor of trying to look very creatively at pulling these bringing fees, especially into new parks and doing more creative things with how we organize them. Very good ideas and again, field fit. But always with a caveat, if we can find ways to reduce barriers to low-income Oregonians, whatever those mechanisms are at our disposal. I don't know what we could talk about that in some workshop someday, perhaps with the commission, but yeah, I really appreciate this with our current revenue situation. We kind of have to do it, but I think it also addresses a range of other kinds of issues as well, if we're strategic about it.
Definitely. Thank you for that. I think a few things come to mind as you're talking. One of them, we've looked at a lot of different scenarios and what other states are doing. And I think there are a lot of options to be able to keep parks available and accessible for people, but also still maintain what we need to maintain. And maybe looking at different level of service instead of seasonal, potentially a weekend increase or something like that to be able to keep them available. There's lots of options. And in that, I want to recognize too that the 26 million, as you said, is a little depressing. But as we've been talking, we feel very confident that this is doable and manageable. We just have to have the momentum and kind of enact the change to be able to do it. But we don't feel as if this isn't achievable. We feel very hopeful about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
thank
we
you.
more so this time just wanted to help you understand kind of where we are and what's happening. We didn't want to overwhelm you with the 26 million solutions we may have. We're going to continue to work on that internally and then come back in February, some good recommendations and some ideas about what we might want to do here. But I also want to point out, we're going to be doing an agency-wide look and kind of going back to basics because revenue is one conversation. We need to be looking at our expenditures and having dialogue. So there's a lot happening right now around all of this. So there'll be a lot more coming because revenue is not the only thing that we need to focus in on here. So you'll be hearing a lot
Absolutely.
more about our core functions, back to the basics, getting back to what our mission is and what our staff always love to hear when I say we're going back to the core function work, but we're going back to our core functions. I know they're like, yay. But it's a good reminder to get back to basics and start looking at a different way that we need to reapproach some of these challenges that we're going to have because this isn't going to get any easier if we don't dig in pretty deep here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Grasty?
So I thought at some point today, I'd say this and it kind of fits with the budget, I think, that 26.3 million is evidence of the success of this organization. We've grown, we're serving the needs, and we've created this problem ourselves at doing it. But as the commission moves ahead and sets a direction for this agency, we also have to recognize something. The lack of ability or willingness, or both, to look at other parks, other parts of the state and expand in it. We don't have the money to do that. I understand that. But we are pushing the people that can't get reservations to the rest of the state and creating problems in so doing. Our success is creating its own problem. We've got to recognize that, the commission does, the agency does, as we move ahead and figure out how we're going to deal with that situation at the same time. I said this yesterday, and Lisa, I know you think you're prepared, but I looked at Sucker Creek last night and went, holy crap. There's no way it's gonna handle what's gonna happen this summer. And I hope I'm wrong in that forecast, but 18 sites are gonna fill up every day all of this next summer is my forecast. And then we're gonna have people all over. There's no immediate solution to that, but long-term, that's just one place that this is gonna be happening in. And we gotta figure out how to help it.
I think
Go ahead,
I'll
Councilor
also
George.
add that there are spillover effects that we'll want to think about at many scales when we talk about fees. And I'm not overly concerned about it, but full disclosure, for example, I have family and friends who live within just a few blocks of the Toledano Wayside. And when that gets full, you have the residential streets for several blocks in all directions turning into the de facto spillover parking lot. If we start creating those kinds of very localized effects, it's another form of, we're sort of displacing some problems to other places. And as Commissioner Grasty points out, displacement can happen at a lot of different scales. I'm not, again, overly concerned about it, but it's certainly part of the overall calculus that we're wanting to think about when we think about the effect of raising fees, especially in parks that have not historically had them.
I think it's challenging too, because, I live on the South Coast and it's a fairly rural area. I hear from a lot of people that they don't feel like they should have to pay day use fees at state parks. They definitely want the tourists to pay them, but they don't. want to.
We've heard that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you get that balance either, because that is
Yeah.
a strong feeling that's repeated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm sure you hear it even more on the North Coast.
All the time, almost daily in the summer. Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you for solving our problems.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for choosing OPRD.
Well, thank you, Courtney and LB. This was amazing. So thank you guys for all the
Thank you
time
so
and
much.
work you put into this.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Okay, we're moving on to real estate issues now. So we are going to start with the Brian Booth State Park with Alice.
And I'm sorry, I won't be able to wow you with a great presentation like theirs was.
Yeah, I'll have to. I'm still working on it. Oh, you get that hot.
There it is. Now it's nice. It's. That my one?
Yeah.
Good morning, Chair Hill, Dr. Sumption, Commissioners. For the record, Alice Beals, Property Agent, OPRD. I'm here today to discuss with you the property adjacent to Beaver Creek State Natural Area within Brian Booth State Park. Make sure my screen sharing. Since 2007, OPRD has been acquiring and managing lands in the Beaver Creek. State.
Alice, can you pull that closer? Sorry.
No, that's okay.
You're never that soft spoken.
I know. Trying to be polite, trying to be polite. Big surprise. Since 2007, OPRD has been acquiring and managing lands in the Beaver Creek area to protect the Beaver Creek watershed and the associated uplands, for natural habitat values. This 32-acre property consists of a section of South Beaver Creek, approximately 13 acres of wetlands around the Beaver Creek, around South Beaver Creek, as well as forested uplands with a small 1 to 1.5 acre area that has been developed for a home site. Consists of a mobile home, several small outbuildings, and some gardens and lawn. Our access into our, if I can show you here with the pointer, no. Our access into our state natural area properties is through this property, the yellow line that you're seeing here. The owner who's been our neighbor since some of our earliest Beaver Creek acquisitions, has expressed an interest in selling this property to OPRD. It's the owner's desire to retain a life estate and continue to live there. Staff support ownership of the property as it would benefit OPRD's efforts to conserve the Beaver Creek wetlands, support recreational opportunities in this area such as the hiking and bird watching, and the existing residents could eventually be used for office space or employee housing. Since recent appraisal activity has determined that a fair market value for the property subject to the life estate is $357,000. The owner has agreed to sell the property to OPRD at the appraised value, and staff are requesting the commission approve acquisition of this property at $357,000 and authorize OPRD director to sign all the necessary instruments to make this happen.
Any comments or questions for Alice? We've talked about this property a bit, but go ahead.
So I really like this acquisition and think it's something we ought to do, but I'm curious, what, do you know the breakdown of real property and buildings in that appraisal?
The value?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have that here with me.
Go ahead.
Good. Please.
I just wanted to make sure, no concerns, you have no concerns about the life estate? Good, thank you.
As I said, she's been a neighbor of ours since some of our earlier acquisitions there. We had actually tried to acquire this when she acquired it. So she's been a great neighbor.
Thank you.
And she's very supportive of what OPRD does here.
Commissioner Dewar, did you have any further comments?
I appreciate your work on this and the opportunity we had to see the property when we were touring the site a few meetings back. I was tempted to invite people who work in that park actively to sort of talk just briefly about how this piece is important and sort of achieves the broader mission. I don't know if we want to call Dennis forward just to speak briefly on that, but I think it might be helpful because you've covered many of those things very, very well. But in some ways, we've been adding pieces to this park, and I think this is an important one, and maybe that we can just add just a little bit more on that.
Sure. Commissioner Hell, Director Sumption, members of the commission, Dennis Comfort I'm the Coastal Region Director office right across the marsh from that particular property. It's a strategic location for us to connect the west side of all of Beaver Creek property proper, which is behind Seal Rock, where the campground is proposed to be built, and the upland area of the trail system that we already have in existence. It's got a house on it and potential parking area for people that visit. Right now, the access is that yellow road easement. There's not really any kind of parking associated with it other than along the county road, which isn't something that is improved or approved. And so we're looking at that position with the house and potential parking to add good parking access for that and staff housing.
Right. Very good. So it solves a number of small problems and just helps build the greater potential of the whole park.
It does. Right. That yellow road actually takes people into our native plant nursery as well. Right. And so there's some other opportunities for outdoor school type activities and some other things. And this solidifies the access without question that we can actually use it legally. There's been some challenges from some different folks that said we shouldn't be able to use that way, and we can. So this just takes that argument.
Resolves all of that and creates those educational opportunities and so forth. Yeah, outstanding. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is would you say it was a mobile home that's sitting there
It's
currently?
manufactured home, yes.
Is it in a state of disrepair or is it?
No, it's in
usable?
excellent condition.
It's in good condition?
Yes, yes, very good condition.
And I think you all asked last time where the county was in on this, and not that they've officially weighed in, but I have checked in with the county and they have no concerns. They have more concerns about us having folks park on that county road and
Right.
walk in, and it gets muddy and it's
Exactly.
degrading
Yeah, yeah.
the county road. And so this solves
It
a
solves
lot
a
of
lot of
community
technical problems.
Yeah, and we'll be able to remove some unfriendly wildlife fencing as well between that existing property where they didn't want any encroachment of visitors walking into their
Right.
yard and stuff. So it opens up a broader range for use
Yeah.
and excellent trail systems. And so it's
Yeah,
good. It's a
yeah.
good place.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Is the surrounding property public or private, and how's this fit with it?
Can you zoom back to the
Well, I
picture?
was gonna pull up my other one. Oops, that's all right. I keep pulling back to that one.
This has been a strategic acquisition area for marbled mural habitat. And so we've been working very closely with the Wetlands Conservancy and some other NGOs on securing this kind of what I would call a potential green island when urban growth boundaries grow to where you can see that this will be a locked in area for protecting the marsh health and habitat itself. And so all of the light green there is all state park property. And the center section that's not light green, that's all marsh area that the Wetlands Conservancy owns, and a few others postage stamp kind of size properties that make sense for us to either acquire at some point. They're unbuildable, so it doesn't matter whether we own them or not. It creates some better neighborhood or neighbor propositions if we own them, so that people don't worry about people getting out of kayaks when they're enjoying the water.
Mhm.
All right, this is an action item, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the acquisition of this property for the appraised value of $357,000. It's proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Dewar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further comments, questions before we move with the vote? Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none. So approved.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you both. All right, moving on to 5B, Tub Springs, Tabitha. Go ahead.
Good morning. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, Commissioners. My name is Tabitha Henriksen, Property Agent with OPRD's Real Estate Services Group. Today, I bring for your consideration a potential donation of an easement from a former neighbor. So the area that you see indicated in the map on the red is the approximate location of that easement. It's about 40 by 55, the defined area. And what it is basically it encompasses an area that is the spring and then the equipment and piping that serves our water right that we currently utilize at Tub Springs State Wayside for the historic tubs. The Tub Springs is a valuable property from a cultural and historic perspective. It's a longtime rest location along the Applegate Trail. Our holdings here are only about 40 acres, but we, until recently, thought we also owned the property that the spring sits on. And so unfortunately, we have found that it's just over the boundary into that north property, Luckily, last year, when this property changed hands, the owner had the foresight to reserve an easement to protect that water right. And they would like to donate that to state parks to serve Teb Springs.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Grasty.
I move that we approve the acquisition of the easement donation.
Recording stopped.
Fine.
I'm so sorry. Don't know.
Rude. Please
Across the property to the north of Tub Springs State Wayside, and authorize the OPRD director to sign all necessary instruments.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further comment or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving this acquisition of easement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none. So approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your work on that one, Tabitha.
Yes, absolutely.
Now we get the
We're
water.
very grateful to the family that's considered donating. that.
Yes, it's very generous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 5C, Fort Yamhill State Heritage Area Transfer.
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, Commissioners, for the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here today seeking approval for item 5C, which would transfer Fort Yamhill State Heritage Area from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon. Some quick background. This may look familiar, so I won't spend too much time on it. But as a reminder, when the property was first developed for Oregon State Parks, it was done so in cooperation with the Grand Ronde under a shared vision that reflects both the mission and the vision for both entities.
Recording in progress.
I don't need to stop and repeat
Okay,
it.
just keep going. Thank you, Billy.
There you'll see some of the stats around what it takes to run the park. We've historically used a permanent position and a seasonal position as well as host to operate the park at a cost of about $700,000 every 2 years, so $350,000 a year. That includes the staffing and services and supplies. It's about a 45-minute one-way drive from the management unit office to the park. And we have determined that really the positions and the funding used to run the park could be better used at other properties. It's not a highly visited day use park, about 73,000 annual visits, as opposed to, there's an example of Willamette Mission gets about 316. The entrance to the park, you actually drive through Grand Ronde Tribe property through their powwow grounds and next to the traditional plank house to get to OPRD property. There's a lot of Grand Ronde property that surrounds the park, and Fort Yamhill is actually in holding within the Grand Ronde Reservation. As you may recall, we attempted to transfer this property to the Grand Ronde in 2022. However, we realized that there was no language in the statute permitting a no-cost transfer to a federally recognized tribe in Oregon. In the meantime, we entered into an agreement with the Grand Ronde for ongoing collaboration and kind of co-management of the property until such time that we could transfer it. In February of 23, House Bill 2737 was passed, which created the new ORS language there, 270.030, which allows a state agency to transfer, convey, donate, exchange, or lease to an eligible Indian tribe, as defined in ORS 307.181, any real property or interest in real property owned by the agency at such price and on such terms as the agency may determine. With this transfer, should it go through, the Grand Ronde would like to put it in trust with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. With that, the BIA does not accept properties with deed restrictions. And so the Grand Ronde have requested that there is not a reversionary clause included in this transfer and on the deed. With the land being in trust with BIA, it does provide a higher level of protection, federal protection, including access to federal funding and cultural resource preservation. This would also grant the property reservation status and subject to the regulatory oversight of the federal agency, the BIA, and the tribe. Similar to other properties that we have transferred to whether it be a city or a county, we believe that this property would be better managed by another entity, and in this case, that would be the Grand Ronde, for a number of reasons, some of which I've mentioned. But the property is again surrounded by Grand Ronde land. In fact, you have to access the OPRD property through Grand Ronde land, and it's an inholding within the reservation. In terms of what it takes to run the park, we feel like that funding and those positions could be better utilized elsewhere, especially in light of some of our financial outlook. And then the history at this site has kind of been told from one kind of point of view for a long time. And this would allow the Grand Ronde to interpret and tell the story of their own history. Over the course of the last couple of years, as we've entered into this agreement, it's created a pretty incredible partnership between Oregon Parks and Recreation Department and the tribe. And I think that we'll continue to see that cooperation into the future. A couple of other notes. While this would not affect the transfer of the actual property, we are working cooperatively to coordinate the transfer of artifacts that have been recovered at the site over the past several decades. We'll continue that work. I'm anticipating it'll take a little bit of time because it's a pretty complex process. And we will consult with SHPO to determine what, if any, mitigation would be needed. I guess of note is if this property is in trust with BIA, I believe that there would be no adverse effect and no need for mitigation because of that federal protection. The Grand Ronde will go to Tribal Council, are anticipating going to Tribal Council in January of 25, anticipating approval from the commission. Similar to any transfer that the agency has done, again, to cities and counties, things like that, they will be done on a case-by-case basis. Traditionally, Oregon State Parks has required a reversionary clause recorded in the deed of any property that we've transferred to another entity. And while the agency may request a no-cost transfer to a federally recognized Oregon tribe with standard deed restrictions and reversionary clause language in the future, because of the unique situation here at Fort
help strengthen the connections between OPRD and the Grand Ronde, which is very close to my area, and I'm applauding that. I think in light of the fact that they've been able the last 3 years to manage this without any undue effect for anybody, and their management plan and their cooperative nature in terms of making this a public access place, and the possibilities of federal designation, which will really protect it, I am comfortable going forward very strongly with getting this put in the right hands at this time. And I think they are the right hands to manage this property.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Dewar?
Well, first I'll say I agree with Commissioner Berger. Yeah, I appreciate all of your work on this and all the work by staff on this. It's been a long but important process, and I appreciate the background as well. I noticed your background discussion started in 2004, about 20 years ago. But to really understand why this all makes sense, you kind of have to provide a background statement that maybe goes back 170 years to realize, of course, that the whole reason that this fort existed was to assist in the rounding up, often by force, of the ancestors of the Grand Ronde, and then placing a military presence right on their back doorstep to keep them contained and under surveillance for a period of time during Oregon's history. And so it is really their history, and a very awkward history in some ways, and an awkward history for us to try to interpret and manage on their behalf. So it is a really unique property with a unique history tied specifically to this tribe. And so it feels like that, this going back to the tribe and then in federal trust for the tribe is an interesting kind of full circle in that history, which is interesting in its own right. We're sort of, you are playing a role in history as we speak. So I do have, in general, concerns about transferring property out of OPRD that lacks deed restrictions and a reversionary clause. But I agree that this case is exceptional and that it still makes sense to go forward in this particular instance. Though I do hope that the intention of maintaining it as a public park and continuing to interpret that history and manage it with that agenda is still codified in somewhere in the process, and perhaps within the language of the deed, if not with a restriction, or through some other mechanism that's available to us to just codify that intention so that people 50 years from now, 100 years from now, are clear on how this came to be. So that is, again, it provides kind of a north arrow for the management of the land going forward. Though everybody is on the same page now, it's good that we remind future generations of our intentions as well. So I appreciate your work on it, and I'll support this. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks so much. And thank you too for the kind of the historical context in terms of background information that really kind of laid the groundwork long before any of us were even here. So thank you for that. And to your comment about it remaining open as a public park, we have commitment from the Grand Ronde through their management plan that they fully intend to keep it open as a public park. Again, I don't know that visitors will notice a whole lot of difference from the way that State Parks has managed it, but I agree, having some sort of agreement that moves it forward past, when we've all moved on and are doing something else, that stays in protection. So thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, and I appreciate that. And as a general principle, whenever we're facing these kinds of situations, I think it's we always want to provide that to for the benefit of future generations if it can't be codified through a conventional deed restriction or reversionary clause. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dewar, for those words. This is an action item, so can I get a motion?
Yeah, I would move the transfer of Fort Yamhill State Heritage Site to the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Dewar. Any further comments or questions before we move forward on vote?
So can I request that if we approve this motion, which I'm sure we will, that the essence of what Commissioner Dewar said in his comments become part of the minutes of this meeting? I think it's important for us to kind of codify that.
Yeah, we will. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor of transfer of Fort Yamhill State Heritage Area to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Hearing none, it's passed.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, and thank you for all your guys' work on this, not just, it's a long one.
This took a while.
All
Maybe
right.
140 years.
Next up, we have Elijah Bristow Restoration Planning as an information item with Ryan, I think.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and commission members. Thank you for having me here today. For the record, my name is Ryan Sparks. I'm the Valley Region Resource Manager with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. And I'm here just for an informational item on agenda item 5D regarding Elijah Bristow and a restoration plan there at the park. A little bit of background, Elijah, for those not familiar, Elijah Bristow is a wonderful day use park, 850 acres, just off the middle fork of the Willamette River, below Dexter Dam and Reservoir, just outside of Eugene and Springfield. And this project, this plan that's being worked on is a floodplain restoration plan, and it's been in the works for a few years now. It's led by OPRD in partnership with the Middle Fork Watershed Council and other supporters as far as a technical team, which involves federal and state agencies, Grand Ron Tribe, and a few others are part of that kind of what we call the technical team that reviews and helps guide the direction of this project. Nearly all of the funding for this project to date has come from grants. And that's part of why we're bringing it forward to use. Just the amount of funding that's been coming in is somewhat substantial. And so just wanted to bring that to your attention. And it's in attachment B in your packet is the kind of the breakdown of those grants to date. So to date, we've received about $1.8 million. And just recently, there was a $1.1 million NOAA grant that got it to that 1.8 million total. And those, just for a little background, those grants aren't coming into OPRD. They're actually being kind of managed through our partner, the Watershed Council, so that it doesn't impact our side of the ledger on that part and our operations there. And OPRD and the Watershed Council haven't, like I said, it's been going on for a few years. Initial grant funding was focused on outreach and kind of planning phases for the project. So they've done community advisory work. They've done a few town halls with the community members. They've done tours, and then they've also done some direct outreach to neighbors, visiting them individually to talk about the project. Because could you imagine with a floodplain project, you know, there probably would be some interest and concern from adjacent landowners to make sure that the project wouldn't negatively impact them or something like that. So there's been a lot of work gone into that outreach, probably more so than what we've done on a lot of projects in the past. And with this NOAA grant that they received, that's allowing us to now kind of move into the design phase. And so if you, again, in your packet, if you look at attachment D, it kind of gives a map of the park property and shows that there are 2 polygons on there, kind of a project area A and B, or 1 and 2, a lower zone and an upper zone. And so we're in the design phase currently for the upper zone. And it's the area that's separated the most from the developed part of the park, the day use areas, things like that. And so we're focusing on that first, and that will be coming along and will be completed in 2025. We're, like I said, we're just now getting into that. They're have it right now at about a 30% design. And then zone 2 will be coming up next. After that, the lower zone, and that will be the area closer to the day use area. Also, more of the park trails and everything are on that part of it. And that'll be completed in 2026, is the anticipated date for that lower zone. And then the implementation for actual construction and the costs to develop it are still unknown at this time. That'll be part of the design phases. We'll start, as those designs get fully developed, we'll be putting cost estimates together on that. And though, again, the intent, like up to this point, would be to use grant funding to actually do the construction and develop the plan fully, and not be searching for, you know, OPRD funding to do that. And I want to just kind of as I wrap up just a little bit here, just while this is primarily focused on kind of a natural resource and benefits from that side of it, Elijah Bristow is very popular, has an extensive trail network with equestrians, birders, hikers. And so this work, while it is focused on the kind of the floodplain and enhancements there, it will contribute to why people are also using that park. Again, we'll be enhancing both for salmon, turtles, habitat, things like that. And so this will be just both a good natural resource, but also a good recreational improvement for visitors there. There will be components of it because of the floodplain changes to making improvements to the trail system, and things like that. So I think that the recreation will continue as it was and will be enhanced by this restoration work that will be going on. So just wanted to share that update because it was a pretty exciting project, and I don't know how often these types of projects get shared with the commission or not. So happy to
Thank
answer
you,
any
Ryan.
questions.
Great collaboration on this too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good work. Anything else?
Quick question. I think you answered it. The 1.8 million is really the upper, is budgeted for the upper section, and they'll go back for other funding for this lower section.
So the 1.8 will get us to the design phase for both the upper and lower
Oh, okay,
section.
so it'll be designed for
Yep.
both. but-
So the design will get to what we'll have to go back for in the future for additional funding is the actual implementation and construction of the work. Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, yeah,
Climate resilience type thing that we need to do.
yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
I'll just thank you and say I really appreciate your coordination with all these partners. I'm excited often when I see that we're bringing OWEB into the fold because our interests so often intersect, and just a lot of opportunity, I think, there for collaboration with OWEB, obviously, but all these other partners as well to carry these things forward. So I appreciate everybody's work on it, and look forward to seeing it when it's all implemented.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Moving on to agenda item 6A under community engagement, ATV committee member reappointments with Michelle. Hi.
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission. My name is Michelle Solis. I'm the Grants and Community Programs Manager with OPRD. Today, I'm presenting item 6A, ATV committee member reappointments, and it's an action item. So the ATV All-Terrain Vehicle Advisory Committee is made up of 16 voting members and 1 non-voting member, representing a wide variety of agencies and disciplines. OPRD is seeking reappointment of 4 positions that will continue serving on the ATV committee. We have 4 ATV Advisory Committee members currently serving on their first term, and they have agreed to serve an additional term, which is always exciting for us. So we are recommending the appointment of Dave Kimball, who represents Class 1 user organizations, Ron Price for the ATV at-large position, and Kevin Rowell and Chris Knopf representing U.S. Forest Service and BLM agency representatives respectively. So the action I'm requesting today is approval to reappoint the recommended ATV Advisory Committee members.
Can I
move approval?
Yep, we have a motion from Commissioner Berger,
I'll second.
a second
Sure.
from Commissioner Dewar, and a thank
Yeah.
you for their service.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And a
Thank
thank
you.
you for your work.
Thank you.
Hearing no further comment, all those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it's approved.
Thank you.
Great, we're moving on to 6B. I don't want to pronounce this word, but after
Got it.
proposed scenic bikeways designation, presented by Craig.
After Heidi.
After Heidi.
Yeah.
After Heidi. After Heidi.
Yeah, it's the funny D in the middle. It's after Heidi. Not a misspelling. So far as I know, now I'm going to check. So Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, Chris Havel with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Here in agenda item 6B, this is an action item for you. While we're getting our external speakers lined up here, the state scenic byway system is currently administered by a contract with Cycle Oregon. It's been that way for a couple of years now as we're undergoing a review for the program. The program is running more or less at station keeping right now, just doing reviews, looking, working with the existing steering committee. But this scenic bikeway designation was in process when the program froze during COVID. So one of our commitments to both proponents and to the scenic bikeway community was, while we're not currently taking any new applications and there's nothing new moving through the system, there is this one which was a hangover and has been ably steered by both the proponent groups and Cycle Oregon's administration of the program to get to the recommendation that's in front of you today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cycle Oregon staff. Steve, I don't know if you're up first.
Yeah, great.
Turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Can everyone see my screen? Just confirming that.
Yes.
Yep, we're all good.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, and members of the commission. My name is Steve Schultz. I'm the Executive Director of Cycle Oregon. And as Chris mentioned, Cycle Oregon is partnering on the Scenic Bikeway program. So we are serving as the program coordinator for the program. Also joining me today is Connor Nolan, who is the lead proponent. He's the destination manager for Travel Lane County. And I just have a real quick slideshow to run you through to sort of familiarize that. I also would like to say that in the future would love to have Courtney and LB maybe go at the end of the meeting, so our slideshows look pretty good compared to that phenomenal high budget presentation on finances. So real quick, the After Heidi Scenic Bikeway, as Chris mentioned, is up for designation. The Scenic Bikeway program is a partnership between State Parks, Travel Oregon, ODOT, and Cycle Oregon, primarily as the founding partners through a collaboration with them. Launched in 2009. Cycle Oregon had a concept and provided some initial funding for the program. It is the only scenic bikeway program in the country still. There are currently 17 designated bikeways throughout the state. And then we did an economic impact study in 2014. Cyclists spent about $12.5 million on food, retail, entertainment, other accommodations on the scenic bikeways. So it's a pretty big economic benefit to rural communities where those bikeways are associated. So why designate? The priorities of a bikeway program, I'll go real quick, are showing Oregon's outstanding natural and built environments, featuring a variety of pleasant sensory experiences, presenting varying recreational challenges for cyclists, promoting cycling as a healthy outdoor recreation. And they follow routes that combine low traffic, slow vehicular speeds, and good cycling facilities, as well as provide an economic impact to those communities along the bikeway. So as Chris mentioned, there was a little bit of a hiatus. So the first scenic bikeway was the Willamette Valley Scenic Bikeway, designated in 2009. Starts at Champoeg, which sounds like you all visited Champoeg yesterday. So it all started there. And in 2011, 2 more scenic bikeways in Lane County were designated: the Covered Bridges and the McKenzie Pass Scenic Bikeway. The After Heidi, as Chris mentioned, was up and in motion. And then we had a little bit of a break between fires, staff changes, and COVID, which resulted in sort of a pause on that. And now that is back on the table as Cycle Oregon took over in 2022, starting to get the After Heidi back into the throes of things. One of the concerns of the After Heidi in 2013 was impacts by the fire. There was fires in that area, and so road quality conditions were questionable. The Forest Service wanted a plan to make sure that they had management for the maintaining and improving that road, and they do have that in place and have made those improvements. So there was a big piece to kind of move through. Part of the designation is a natural environment, natural and remote, and so this runs between Westford Oak Ridge communities and the communities on the McKenzie River in the Rainbow area. It winds through a bunch of lush undergrowth, so there's a lot of old growth dug firs. Constitution Grove is near the top of Box Canyon there, and it follows the scenic rivers of the South Fork of McKenzie, which is a wild and scenic river, and then the North Fork of the Willamette River all join up there. We look for a complete ride. So what does the ride look like? So this is a great blend of sort of gentle climbing, descents, and a little bit of effort at the top. So it's a really balanced approach. It's also 60 miles, which is a good day trip, good couple day trip if you camp at the top. So it's a really good complete package putting that together. And then obviously it's a pleasant experience. There's a lot of great undergrowth. As you get on the north side, you'll pass Terwilliger Hot Springs and Cougar Reservoir. So recreation, so both water, little soap for your bones on the bike, and then jumping in the lake to get something, get a little refreshment. Cycle Oregon has actually used the Aufderheide on 3 of our week-long events, starting as far back as 1992. So we, as an organization, know this route is a great route to bring cyclists on, and fits our criteria for putting together the best bike rides in the country. So as mentioned before, Lane County has 3 of them. You can see the Willamette Valley, the covered bridges, Mackenzie Pass. The Aufderheide would actually sit right here between the covered bridges and Mackenzie Pass scenic bikeways, if designated. And it would establish Lane County as a cycling destination for cyclists visiting the county to ride. So as you all know, Lane County is a pretty massive county. There are bigger counties, but from a populous standpoint, it offers a lot for the cyclists. So real quickly, what are the goals for the Aufderheide as we designate a scenic bikeway? Marketing, telling everybody about it, those that don't know. So Lane County will serve serving sort of as the host, so driving web traffic to their cycling content through storytelling, interactive maps, and messaging about it. Have partnered with Travel Oregon on logo design already for the Aufderheide, so it's very in line with the rest of the scenic bikeways logos. That'll have for Eugene, Cascades, and Coast. So the Travel Lane County, it'll help attract high-spending visitors to Lane County's communities, and then disperse them throughout the county. It's all these rural communities. So one of the great things about the bikeways, as you probably all know, is the small rural communities that they tie together and bring some impact and promoting the vitality of those communities. Infrastructure improvements, goal 2. So installing some informative panels at the route starting points. So kiosks to give people points of interest and inform them of any kind of road conditions. So there's some existing at the on the Westford side, and then there'll be a new kiosk on the Mackenzie River side. Cycle Oregon actually gave a grant for that kiosk a number of years ago before everything was paused. So that will be in motion. Wayfinding, obviously, everything will be signed with the scenic bikeway designated signs. The next goal, to support and create bike-friendly businesses and create partnerships with bike-adjacent businesses. So the bike-friendly business program was tied into the scenic bikeway program. So this is reinvigorating that, particularly in Lane County, packaging and distributing promotional materials, and getting those folks to work with the county so that there's a bigger impact through tourism. And then a ribbon cutting. So goal 4 is a event in the spring. We'll host representatives for various county organizations across the state for a press release, and we'll kick off the 2025 cycling season, celebrating the Aufderheide and enhancing Lane County's reputation, as well as the state of Oregon as the premier cycling destination. So designating the Aufderheide Scenic Bikeway will add a crown jewel to this program that we already have. It would be the 18th Scenic Bikeway. The route's beauty, pristine riding services, and geographical positioning to small communities and other recreational activities, such as mountain biking, hiking, fishing, and kayaking, offer a full outdoor recreation experience for all visitors. We are officially requesting the designation of the Aufderheide as an official Oregon Scenic Bikeway. I'd like to open up for any questions from the commission, and Connor and I can address any of those for you.
I have a question. I camped down at Westford quite a bit in my RV, and I've biked that thing, and I'd like to really challenge your word gentle.
Well, yeah, I guess it's if you're pushing with a gas pedal or pushing with a crank pedal. Yeah, it's gentle. There's some gentle. It's the downside is really gentle.
I will agree. It's beautiful. No, it is a beautiful place up there.
Thank you, Commissioner Condor.
No, I haven't.
I will entertain a motion on this.
I move to approve the Aufderheide Scenic Bikeway designation.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Condor. All those in favor of approving the scenic bikeway designation. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none. Okay, it passes.
Thank you so much, Commission. Connor, Steve, nice work.
Great. Thank you, and thanks for the partnership with OPRD.
Connor,
Appreciate it.
good to see you.
You too.
Right, moving on to Heritage with Matt with HIPPO update.
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, for the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here today with an informational item 7A, which is a Heritage Division update. Before I jump into it, I did first want to thank you again for making the time to have Curry and Sherry and Katie from the Heritage Outreach and Grant Program yesterday. It's a pretty amazing amount of work and that they do, and the amount of communities that they touch. It's pretty fantastic. So thank you. As far as updates, as you can see there, and I'm sorry, I'm actually meant to bring you hard copies of the new Oregon Historic Preservation Plan. Oh, did you get them?
Yep.
I meant for that to happen.
You did do that.
Nice work.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. It's a pretty incredible document. The team spent a bunch of time now that it's adopted and in place to start making sure that the work that they're doing kind of hits towards those four pillars around building the heritage community, preservation planning, government efficiency, and technology tools. As you can see from the briefing, they reached out to an incredible amount of folks virtually and in person across the entire state, local governments, state governments, tribes, and some of the different organizations. They really did a good job kind of pulling information to be able to put that plan together. I also wanted to note the work that the Oregon Heritage Division is doing, documenting the history of some of the lesser known communities in Oregon. There's a couple of pretty neat examples there of some of that work that they're doing. And I think I mentioned at our last meeting, or maybe Ian mentioned it in June, that the Heritage Division is finally fully staffed. Evan West came on in September, so he is kind of our final kind of person to fill a position within the division. It's a pretty amazing group of pretty excited folks to get some good work done. So the last page of the briefing, the Heritage Division thought it would be a cool idea, and I absolutely agree that as you're traveling around the state for the commission meetings, they're going to add that final page, which highlights some of the work that they've done in the communities that we're visiting as you travel around the state. So this one is specific to Marion County. It talks about some of the work that they've done around designations, the Mentor Corps program, some of the grants and things like that. I'm not going to go through it, but I think it's a pretty neat resource list for you all to see and get familiar with, and see, again, kind of the communities that they touch across the state. Yeah, I thought that was very cool. So with that, I would be happy to try and answer any questions.
Wait, send this page home with the commissioner?
I was actually going to drop a copy off. Yeah.
This is great.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you for all your
Yeah,
guys'
thank you
work,
very
and
much.
the presentation yesterday was very helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, we get to move on to Park Development Division and spend quite a bit of time with Rob Morris on this. So I think he's online. Great. Okay, we can go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and members of the commission. For the record, my name is Rob Morris, and I'm the engineering lead for Park Improvement Central Services with OPRD. I'm here today again to present various items for your consideration that relate to park improvement projects that are being managed by my fellow statewide project managers. Got a bit of a list going, so with that, we'll jump right into it. So item 8A is the first item, Saddle Mountain paving contract. So this is a request for approval to execute a paving contract not to exceed $1.2 million. This is for the removal of existing asphalt, base repair, grading and compaction, and repaving of the 7-mile road that leads from Highway 26 to the day use area of Saddle Mountain. And as I mentioned, it varies in the extent of the repairs. Some portions of the road are in better shape than others, but in general, the asphalt condition is poor, and we want to make it, a safe and accessible place for people to get up to Saddle Mountain and enjoy that area. And so there are some portions of the pavement that are slumping and failing. So we'll be addressing the base rock of those sections, but generally it's a paving contract. So again, no prior action by the committee, and the action requested is to execute a contract not to exceed $1.2 million for that construction.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Any, we toured this, I think earlier this year, this road, and it's quite a feat. Do I have any questions?
Yeah, Rob, thank you very much. This is Commissioner Doug Durr. I appreciate this. Yeah, this road does need work. There's a lot of slumping and other things wrong with it. One quick question for you. Will this result in a park closure? And if so, how long will it be?
This would, the construction of this would result in a loss of access to the day use area. And so we are actually, I don't have a time frame for the construction of it. Once we get the contractor on board, they would give us some construction schedule. If I had to make a wild guess, it would, be less than a month of work. But some of that may have to do with how much of the base we need to repair as opposed to just overlay and paving. So it's hard to say right now without a contractor on board and, considering availability of materials and that sort of thing.
Understood. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion for this.
I move
Wait for
approval.
Joel.
Yeah, Joel.
I have way too many questions about this. but,
Okay.
I was just wondering what percentage of this road, you say it's 7 miles long, what percentage of this road is going to be topped and repaved?
Nearly all of it.
Nearly all?
It'll depend on bids. If we have authorization for 1.2 million, depending on where asphalt costs come into play, we can shorten up some sections that are not in dire need of repair to work within that budget. But basically we're going to try to do as much as possible. And if feasible, if within the budget, at least resurface the majority of the 7 mile stretch.
No, I just think that's pretty optimistic to where you're at there. It's a remote location. And I know what the asphalt prices cost up there. And if you're doing base work, you're trying to fix 7 miles of road. Are you confident in that engineering estimate that you can get this done for this dollar amount? Because I'm not at not at that length. I have a feeling you're going to be back here asking for more money.
Well, like I said, we'll do whatever, fits in our budget. So I think the main focus is to repair the parts that are slumping and that are, a direct hazard to vehicles. And then basically resurface as much as possible. To be honest, I didn't put together the construction estimate, so I can't speak to the confidence of it. That's, my fellow project manager, but generally he does have his thumb on the pulse of paving and, sort of the costs out there. So, that is our best estimate.
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, Commissioners, for the record, Matt Rippey. I would say because it's a narrower road, there's not much expansion we can do in terms of widening it. We may not be able to get all of it, but I think that just knowing, so John Sievers is our construction project manager that does paving, and I do have quite a bit of faith that what he's relayed in the brief is pretty accurate. He's been doing it for a long time. And again, I think, like Rob said, some of the lower stretches aren't as bad. It's once you really start climbing that you see some of that sloughing. So I think it's going to be more of that upper level. So great question. Thank you. Yeah. And I would just say, I think Commissioner Hill mentioned we were there, gosh, was that in April maybe? And it's a horrible road right now. So really anything we can do is going to make it much, much better, much safer.
I have to say, how much I appreciate the fact that Commissioner Condor asked that question, because I'm sitting over here flabbergasted at 1.2 and 7 miles. But more power to you.
Kept looking to the left before I made the motion to see if I try to read your expression. Figuring but Yeah, I will still, I made the motion and I'll stick with
Okay,
it.
thank you. We have a motion on the table from
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Dewar, a second from Commissioner Grassi. All those in favor of approval to execute a paving contract not to exceed 1.2 million, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
Thank you.
Should we take a break for lunch? It looks like lunch is here and it's 12 o'clock. So why don't we take a 15-minute break and we'll come back at 12:15. And yeah, thank you. And thanks, Rob, for holding for
No problem.
We just have a lot of things left on our agenda, so I want to make sure we get folks calling in a reasonable hour this evening. So if Rob, if you're still interested in continuing.
I'm here for it.
Item 8B, Clyde Holiday Campground paving contract.
Yeah, thank you. Again, for the record, this is Rob Morris, engineering lead for OPRD. Clyde Holiday State Park 2025 paving improvements. The scope includes asphalt removal, base repair, grading, compaction, and repaving the campground. Other things that are going to be happening are there's going to be some site accessibility improvements involved with that paving to make sites more easy to navigate for people with mobility limitations. There's also going to be some retaining wall repair associated with the project, as well as modernization of the dump station area that will, again, improve accessibility to the hookups of the dump station. So overall, a paving and accessibility project. The project budget request is $850,000. And so there's been no prior action by the commission. And action being requested here is approval to execute a paving contract not to exceed $850,000.
Wonderful. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Cribbins. Can I? Oh, I have a second. All those in favor of approving this contract for $850,000, not to exceed $850,000, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
Great. Thank you. So moving on to item 8C, this is the Kam Wah Chung Architecture and Engineering Contract Amendment. The request here is approval to amend the existing architectural and engineering contract with Cole Architects to over $750,000. There's a lot of information in the brief, but just generally, the current contract was based on developing a program and design provided by a previous architect. There were some issues with the vision of the previous architect. So that's why we changed direction on that. The program has been needed to completely redevelop due to significant changes and needed to better suit the needs of the community, the site, and OPRD. So the original contract was for $524,307. And the total after this amendment would be $1,300,000. This is compared to a projected construction budget of currently $7 million. A little bit of background on this is, as I mentioned, there were some issues with the initial architect and the initial vision of what they were providing to us. The aesthetics that they were proposing were not what we wanted for state parks. They're also, because this is a culturally sensitive site and speaks to the Chinese community in that area. It was determined that the original overall design was not very sensitive to the Chinese culture and didn't do much to honor sort of their contributions to the community. There were also issues with the layout of the previous design. The exhibit space was too small, and there were portions of the property that weren't addressed in the previous design also. And so with all those things being put together, it was clear that the original consultant was not a good fit for the design. And so we kind of had to, change direction and retool it. And so this request is to sort of facilitate, proceeding with the design. It's currently in the design development stage right now. And so we need to move beyond design development into complete design, which includes additional surveying, site investigation services. And then this contract would also include bid assistance, construction administration, and all phases of the standard work order contract. So basically this, this additional amendment to the contract would basically bring us all the way through construction of this project. So that's kind of a broad brush explanation of what's going on here, but please let me know if you have any
Got some
questions.
So Commissioner Grasty?
I actually was gonna move for approval to amend the A&E contract to a value not to exceed 1.3 million.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Cribbins. Do we have any comments or questions before we move forward? I have a question. Can you explain a little bit more? So the numbers aren't that straightforward. Did we pay the original architect a portion of this money? And then we are subsequent, is Cole Architects, are they receiving the potential 1.3 million or is it less than that?
Yes, no, my understanding is the original contract with Cole Architects was for $524,000. And that was to bring it up through basically schematic design into design development. We estimate that at about 60% design. And so the contract amendment, which is, the ask for $750,000 would be to provide services from that 60% design up to 100% design, and then administration through the construction phase as well to finish out the project.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. So all those, let me make sure I have the verbiage right. All those in favor of approval to amend the A&E contract not to exceed $1.3 million, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
And Denise and Katie, you got Commissioner Grassi was, okay. When we do these, if we can just call who did the motion and who second, it's been hard for them to hear, I think.
Yeah. All right, moving on to 8D, Fort Stevens Utility Upgrade Construction Contract.
Yeah, so this is a request for approval to award a construction contract up to $14.6 million. This is for the construction of the Fort Stevens utility upgrade that's associated with our GO bonds and one of our larger GO bonds projects. So this is an improvement of 4 camp loops L, M, N, and O, complete utility retrofit of those, providing sewer, water, electrical services, and some of those are in dire need of repair. It also involves site improvements to the Peter Iredale day use area to improve access to existing restrooms. So it'll be regrading of some parking lots and accessibility improvements like sidewalks, curb ramps, and stuff like that. Another part of that $14.6 million is a significant part of that is with the redevelopment of the 4 camp loops I mentioned, we will be rehabbing what's called the South Camp Lift Station, which was a lift station that was installed many, many years ago and was never used. And so there is some existing infrastructure that we can use, and it has capacity, we believe, to serve all of the new connections that will be developed through those 4 camp loops. However, it will need rehabilitation, new pumps, new electrical, a standby generator, and generally cleaning out of the existing wet well, because as you know, Fort Stevens is very, at very low elevation. So it turns out that wet well is completely full of sand. So there's definitely some rehabilitation to be had at the South Camp Lift Station. So that's a significant part of the cost. And then finally, within this package of projects under the $14.6 million umbrella is a replacement of the C-Loop restroom. And so that is actually being funded through one of our restroom POPs as opposed to the GO bond funding, which is going to go to the rest of the project. And that is an old restroom. It's in dire need of repairs. It has, toilets and showers. And so we're going to be tearing that down and building a new a brand new 8-room restroom, which will include 5 showers and 5 toilets, 2 of which will be shared in the same room, which is why it's 8 rooms. And that will be based on our standard, our OPRD standard prototype, which we recently had a consultant come up with, and we've been implementing throughout the state. So it's going to be a massive upgrade for that restroom and the facilities in the C Loop. So overall, it's going to affect 5 different camp loops plus the Peter Iredale day use area. Right now, the time frame for those improvements is essentially the entire year of 2025. The park has committed to having those camp loops closed for at most the entire year of 2025. Again, timing and construction schedule will depend on the contractor that we get on board and their capabilities. So, we may not need all that time, but we want to give them that opportunity to, because groundwater is such an issue out there, we want to give them the opportunity to, employ different construction methods, pick their timing that's most beneficial to, constructing underground utilities. And so those sort of considerations will be part of the contractor schedule. But we are trying to plan for an extended closure of those 4 camp loops and the C Loop restroom in the day area. I will also mention that the time frame for the C Loop restroom is a little tighter because that the restroom policy option package money needs to be spent by the end of June. So that restroom will have to come first in the phasing of construction. And I can report that right now the invitation to bid is being reviewed by the Department of Justice, and we are very close to putting it out to bid right now. So I have the proposed construction timeline in there of bidding November, December 2024. Department of Justice recently revised their invitation to bid format, and that held things up a little bit. So it's looking more like December 2024 for bidding. Construction, again, January 2025 to December 2025, with the first half of that year being the construction of the restroom, and then reopening of the improved facilities in January 2026. So the prior action by commission was the approval of the Fort Stevens GO Bond project in November 2021. And the action requested is the approval to execute a construction contract with the value not to exceed $14.6 million. I'll take any questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner Condor with a question.
I had a question. The bidding timeline on that is, you're basically saying December is all you're going to have for the bidding time?
It'll probably extend into January, depending on, I mean, if DOJ gets back to me tomorrow, we can put it on the streets tomorrow, but it's kind of the waiting game right now. So to me, it's looking more like the majority of December and probably extending into January before we actually execute the contract.
And that still leaves your completion date at December of 25?
Yes, yes. I think that the construction timeframe of 1 year is very, very conservative in the sense that we're giving the contractor plenty of time and plenty of opportunity to plan their, make a plan of attack. The long lead items on this are going to be the electrical items. That's what we've been seeing in a lot of these improvement projects as we've been doing them, GO Bond projects and other park improvement projects. So a lot of their timing will depend on, their lead time for those items. And so we want to give them the flexibility, if they tell us, well, it doesn't make sense to get into, loops L, M, N, and O and start doing the underground utility until, say late summer, early fall, because we won't have the electrical equipment until the winter. And, the groundwater will be beneficial to, site conditions. Then we want to give them that flexibility. And what that does is, minimize or give the park more flexibility to, work around closures and possibly open up some sites and gain some revenue, or, just do their own work in those areas since they're closed. But we tried to be very conservative on the time frame for to give the contractor maximum flexibility, and that should help with the pricing as well, because dewatering is going to be a huge part of this project.
Thank you.
Dewar, do you have a question?
I do. Are these improvements entirely on lands where OPRD holds title, or is some part of this work being done on lands where we hold long-term leases?
It is all within lands that we hold title on.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion if someone would like to put one forward.
All right, I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Grasty, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Dewar with a second. Hearing no further comment or questions, all those in favor of approval or to execute a construction contract not to exceed 14.6 million, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved. All right, on to 8E, Silver Falls North Gateway Visitors Center, Phase 3 construction contract.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a project that consists of structural repairs, siding repairs, and completion of construction of the final building design for the North Gateway Visitor Center at Silver Falls. Finished Visitor Center will include an entry lobby, interpretive elements, a cafe, dining area, secondary lobby, and covered patio. The project was selected due to increased demand on the park and to improve and protect the existing facilities. So the structure was existing and has already gone through several phases of rehabilitation. The first phase was foundation work and waterproofing of the structure, just to get it, able to start doing work inside on. The second phase was framing, structural, siding, and complete exterior envelope to really get it tightened up and weather protected. And so this third phase will include structural and siding repairs to the existing building, final completion of the building, and to fix some structural deficiencies that have been found within the building since these first two phases were implemented. The total budget for the project is currently $3 million. And the funding is coming from Go Bond. And yeah, the timeline is bidding in July 2025, contract of August 2025, and construction in between January 26 and March 27. So this is a little ways out, but you can see attached to the brief are some photos of the building as it sits right now. And so, it's starting to take shape, but definitely needs a little more work to get it ready to be a visitor center. So prior action by the commission was to approve the Silver Falls Go Bond project at the November 2021 commission meeting. And the action being requested is approval to execute a construction contract for those phase 3, the phase 3 work that I had mentioned, with the value not to exceed $3 million.
Great, thank you, Rob. Can I get a motion?
I'll move to execute a construction contract not to exceed 3 million.
Commissioner Berger with a motion.
I'll second.
Oh, I'm going to go with Commissioner Izumi on that one for the second. Thank you for the eagerness. I appreciate that. Questions, comments, Commissioner Grasty?
Rob, does this complete it? Or is there another phase after this one?
This does complete the project, yes.
Thanks.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor to execute a construction contract not to exceed $3 million, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved. Moving on to 8F, Smith Rock A&E contract amendment.
Yeah, thanks. So this is Smith Rock Architectural Engineering Contract Amendment. The ask is to increase the architectural and engineering contract funding from $1.5 million to $1.9 million. So a total ask of an additional $400,000, sorry. And again, similar to previous projects that I'd mentioned, like Kam Wah-Chung Visitor Center, the previous scope, that $1.5 million in the architecture and engineering contract was to get the project up through the planning and design development phase. So get it up, to around 60% design and kind of do the legwork to make sure the permitting was, all taken care of. There was also work on the master plan because there were some changes that needed to be made and the master plan was outdated. So that was sort of an additional cost that wasn't necessarily factored into the original GO bond estimate, but ended up being a necessity to facilitate this project. And so, like I said, the previous scope was to get it up to about 60%. And then what we're asking for now and what's kind of delineated in the bullet points in the brief is to basically bring that 60% up to 100% construction documents, secure all permitting, and then that also includes bidding assistance and construction administration to bring this project all the way to completion. So.
All right. Thank you. Any questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve amending the A&E contract up to $1.5 million. Whoops.
Nope, 1.9.
1.9, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Grasty. Can I get a second? Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Yeah, please.
Stand there and actually gaze. This is a wonderful project.
You can come cut the ribbon after we do Silver
No.
Falls.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry if there's a question. I can't hear.
I'm just saying.
She's
that it's
giving you accolades.
I'm
Oh,
saying
okay.
I love the pictures, that the perspective pictures. I love this project. I want to see it through.
I just want to make sure you're protecting all the juniper trees.
The juniper trees, the raptors. There's a lot of natural resource considerations out there. Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor of increasing consultant A&E design contract up to 1.9 million signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none. So approved. On to 8G, Collier Campground Entrance Improvement Construction Contract.
Yeah. So this is pretty much what it sounds like. This was part of the policy option package funding for paving for this biennium. And this is basically to improve the entry to the overnight camping area, providing a new paved roadway, parking area, storage building for staff use, registration kiosk, access gates, dump station improvements. This is kind of just a rehabilitation of that gateway area. And this has complete design and is essentially what we like to call shovel ready. So we have 100% design, permitting is all in hand and is ready to be worked on. Also, I'll mention that the new infrastructure again includes accessibility improvements to all those facilities that I mentioned. So yeah, the action being requested is approval to proceed with executing a construction contract not to exceed $850,000.
Thank you, Rob. Any comments before we move forward? Go ahead.
I do have, yeah, thank you, Rob. I have one quick question, which is You note in the brief that a lot of this was prompted by the 242 complex fire. Would you say that this work is being undertaken more or less exclusively because of fire damage, or would you say that's, I'm wondering, is this entirely because of fire damage? Is this like half due to fire damage and half is sort of maintenance that would have been due around now regardless?
You know, I'm not intimately familiar with the project as I'm not the project manager, but I would say without full knowledge of what the fire did to the park, I'd say a lot of this is just regular maintenance of deteriorating infrastructure. I don't know what exactly the fire impacted in the park, but these are the kind of, similar to, Clyde Holiday and some of the other pop paving projects that we've had. It's really just long overdue pavement maintenance and the opportunity to increase accessibility.
Right. Yeah, understood. I'm just thinking forward to potential budgetary implications of catastrophic fire into the future and what that may mean for the department. So
even prior, maybe Saddle Mountain might be worse, but Collier paving needed to be done prior to fire.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, we would also receive FEMA funding and other sources to be able to do some rebuilds. So
right.
this was mostly already there.
Yeah, understood. I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Dewar. Can I get a second?
Second.
I'm going to go with Commissioner Grasty on that one. All right, all those in favor of executing approving to execute a construction contract not to exceed $850,000 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Hearing none, so approved. All right. Yaquina Bay construction contract.
Yeah, so the Yaquina Bay Lighthouse was the subject of policy option package funding within this biennium. This project involves new roofing, siding repairs, iron and steel repairs at the lantern, window repairs, and exterior painting of the entire building. The prior action by the commission was to approve an award for a construction contract not to exceed $1.4 million. The apparent low bid has come in closer to $1.6 million. And so the ask here is to provide that full bid plus a $200,000 contingency on the project to bring it up to $1.8 million funding total. So as I said, prior action by the commission was approving $1.4 million for the construction contract. This acts to increase that by $400,000 to approval of an award for a construction contract not to exceed $1.8 million.
Any questions?
Yeah, are there opportunities for nonprofits and other funding for this project? This can't put campers in there. So talk a little bit about, I mean, it'll certainly be easier to maintain if it's not a crumbling building, but what other things can be brought to bear here?
Well, its biggest value to the agency is as a historic resource. So, it'll improve visitorship to the area. It'll provide education. It's not necessarily, I guess the impetus for this is not necessarily revenue based or revenue driven as some of the other projects are, but it's still,
Well, I don't want to put it that way. I don't want you to overreact to that. What I'm trying to say is surely there are other partners who would be interested in going forward with this, but I see a huge silence back there that I need to tap into. Come on, Matt.
He's like, I don't even know what topic we're on. We're talking about the lighthouse, and is there an opportunity to provide additional funding from outside of the agency?
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, Commissioners, for the record, Matt Rippey with Oregon State Parks. I think that there are, but I will back up for just a moment and mention that this is the only lighthouse that we actually own, and which is why
It doesn't reflect well on us
No.
in the picture.
No.
I know, but it will soon. But that's why this one was chosen in particular to invest in. I do think that there are opportunities, and I think kind of based on some of the information that Courtney shared with us earlier today, that we're going to have to start looking at some of those opportunities a little bit more. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Thank
Okay. Right.
Do we know why we own this one and not the others? I'm just curious.
I don't know the history of why we own this one over looking at that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know either.
I'm always
So
surprised
many-
at what we actually own versus what we don't. Like, oh.
Yeah, and so many of the lighthouses are in disrepair, so.
It's a pretty visible thing, these coastal,
Mhm.
and it just seems to me that the people in that community, if they value this as part of their community, they're groups that ought to partner up with us on this and
Yeah.
make it part of their cultural heritage, if we will. Sorry.
I think it's a good point. And I think too, looking at some of the other lighthouses that we manage, but we don't own, or that we lease and we don't own, as those leases are coming up and expiring, we're trying to engage those federal agencies to see, is there a way we can cost share? Because clearly we don't have the funding to maintain them at the level that they should be maintained. So more of that to come kind of over time, but at least we're starting to have those conversations. In fact, Fort Stevens is another example, not that there's a lighthouse there, but with the historic military facilities there, we're starting to have that conversation with the Corps of Engineers.
Coastal properties
They're top coastal.
are rough.
And expensive.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll take a motion.
I'll move approval.
All right, Commissioner Berger with the motion. Can I have
I'll
a
second it.
All right, Commissioner Condor with the second. All those in favor of awarding a construction contract not to exceed 1.8 million for the Aquina Bay construction signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, it is passed. Our last one with you, Rob.
All right, I'm ready.
Contract.
So the last one is the Benson paving contract. This is a repaving of a parking lot at Bitson State Recreation Area. It includes removal of existing asphalt, base repair, grading, compaction, and repaving of the parking lot. Again, involves accessibility improvements, improved traffic circulation, and storm drainage improvements, and landscape restoration in the area. No prior action by the commission, but the ask here is approval to execute a paving contract not to exceed $1.1 million.
Questions? I'll take a motion.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Commissioner Dewar with a motion and Commissioner Cribbins with a second. All those in favor signify or of executing approval to execute a paving contract not to exceed 1.1 million signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
Madam Chair, I, for Rob's benefit, and thanks for putting all these projects together and a lot of work and pretty understandable. Also got to say, I don't remember in 8 years on this commission approving this much money at one meeting.
It's a lot. Let's go Bonzer.
Those go bonds.
Thanks for taking in, Rob.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks to your whole team.
Yeah, thank you all.
Right. We are on agenda item 9, rulemaking. Katie is ready to go with day use permit rules.
Sorry. I need it back.
Wrong year.
Sometimes the timing is perfect.
It's like,
We don't know.
just reach out to me.
Yeah. There we go. I'm like, that's the wrong year. Just said November, but.
Thank you.
Oh, it's not sure. I'll just read it. I don't know. Oh, that's where that.
Who runs that?
Okay, Chair Hill,
Go ahead, Katie.
Director Assumption, members of the commission, Katie Guthier here with agenda item 9A. Request to adopt day use permit and facility amendment rules. You may remember that we came to you. Let me see if I can get. No, that's not. At the last commission meeting, you adopted changes to the day use fee. Sorry, I don't know what it means. Not moving. Sorry. No. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. You may remember at the last commission meeting, you approved changes to the rate ranges and changes to the day use fees, but we withheld changes to the where we charge a day use permit and where we charge out of state rates for group facilities. So that was where this rulemaking is. You heard from Courtney earlier today that we charge a day use parking permit fee at 25 parks. And they are listed specifically in rule. And you saw this chart earlier today. These are the parks that we charge we require a day use parking permit. So the proposed changes would remove that list from rule and require a parking permit at all parks unless the director waived that requirement. And the director currently plans to waive the requirement at most parks, and signs would be posted at parks that required a permit. We have no specific plans about which parks would require a permit, but we would review those beginning in 2025 and develop a policy with criteria and a process for how those parks would be determined and how public feedback would be evaluated in the process of determining which parks would assess a fee. So we did, and then the second piece of this rule were the group facilities. And you saw this last time, but the change, so we didn't change any of the rates, but we did add the out-of-state rate. So in the light blue column is the out-of-state rate. That's the 25% surcharge for out-of-state on all of the group facilities. There is an addition of the Smith Rock Amphitheater. That's a specific facility at Smith Rock that people rent that overlooks the canyon. Commissioner Berger.
It doesn't say 25% for out of state.
So in the updated version,
Oh, I don't have the updated. version.
our esteemed counsel said that we forgot the correct words of out of state. So it's a
Thank you.
25%.
Hey, good.
Yes, he earned his,
Okay.
yes. So the updated version does have the correct out of state added.
Let's get that right. Council.
Yes, important addition. And then we have the Shore Acres packages as well. So public comment was open from October 1st to November 1st. We had a public hearing on October 23rd. We received 20 written comments and one person spoke at the public hearing. The comments were concerned, a majority concerned, some support. Those in support were supportive of improved park maintenance and resource protection, increased flexibility, and understanding that prices were increasing everywhere. There was significant concern on the impact for accessibility and people with disabilities. The public comment at the hearing was requesting reduced price for people with disabilities with the thought that they can't access the entire park, so shouldn't be required to pay the full cost for the entire park. And concerned just about the entire financial burden that we're placing on people. Thoughts about parks being funded through taxes and not wanting to have an out-of-state fee in general. So the request,
Not having to,
just people who opposed an out-of-state fee broadly.
was that a very high?
No,
uh,
most of the comments were around the day use fee, not around the out-of-state
Okay.
fee. So the request is to adopt the proposed amendments as updated to 736-015-0030 and 736-015-0040 to update day use parking permit and the group facility rules.
All right. Can I go ahead, Commissioner Grassi?
Couple of comments and questions maybe. I still think at some point, we've got to think about some kind of senior discount card, something at some point. Probably not part of this conversation, but at some point, I think we ought to, and I know how self-serving that is.
Are you listening?
I got a federal one.
Paid for by
The,
taxes.
the other thing I'm really curious, have we looked at all of what the impact to the visitation at the Owyhee campgrounds, what that might be out of state wise? Out of state wise. Because I know there's a lot of Idaho visitors there.
We haven't specifically evaluated each park and what the impact is going to be. It is something we've modeled across this. We looked broadly at when we included the RV, and the RV rates are the majority of our sites. So by adding an out-of-state surcharge on the tent sites, it's not as big as the out-of-state surcharge that we were legislatively required to add for the RV sites. And broadly, we didn't see a reduction in the number of people camping. We saw a modest change in the shift of more Oregonians versus people from out of state. So it went from like 64% or 61% Oregonians to 64% statewide.
And I will note our rates are cheaper than Idaho and they charge double for out of state visitors from Oregon.
We didn't raise it enough.
Might be the only way we can get to your senior discount.
I hope we're not
No.
broadcasting in Boise.
Yeah, whatever. The other thing that just a piece of information, or I'm curious if you know this, if this conversation continues. The only toll road in Oregon that I would ever supported, or that I would today, is in fact the highway going to the Hawaii, because of the massive usage that it is with no gas tax revenue. Are you aware of that conversation continuing or not?
The federal government would have to approve it.
Toll road? It requires Senate confirmation in Oregon for a toll road. I did look into that once. State Senate.
I'm
You have
just
better
thinking-
luck with your senior discount.
Oh, yeah. I totally support it.
All right. Any other?
I'll make a motion if no one else is
Okay,
in.
that'd be great. Thank you, Commissioner Grassi. We have a motion from Commissioner Grassi. Can I have a second?
Second it.
All right, Commissioner Condor. So the proposal before us is to adopt amendments to 736-015-0030 and 736-015-0040 to update day use parking permit and group facility rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
Chair, I just clarify that the approval was of the latter distributed that includes the words reserved by non-residents.
Yes, that is
So
correct.
that's
That
on
is
the record
correct.
that that's
Yes.
what we did.
Thank you. As we
Thanks.
discussed,
Was my
yes.
motion.
Okay, thank you, Katie. On to 9B. Prohibiting camping along Ocean Shore in Brookings.
Great. So Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 9B. And online, we have Justin Helberg.
Hello, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission. I'm Justin Helber. I'm the South Coast District Manager with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
That's good. We can hear you.
So we wanted to provide some background. In your meeting in July, you approved opening rule making on this item. We received a petition in June of 2024 requesting an amendment to add Brookings to the list of cities prohibiting camping on the ocean shore within the city limits. The petitioners cited public health risks, risk to public safety, and impacts on the marine ecosystem as reasons for the closure. Currently, camping is prohibited in 8 cities and portions of 2 counties on the ocean shore. This is what it would look like. It would prohibit camping within the city limits of Brookings. Currently, camping is prohibited along the ocean shore within the limits of a state park. So in green here, you have Harris Beach State Park, which is in the city limits of Brookings. So camping is currently prohibited there, but the red boundaries along here, camping would be prohibited. So we opened public comment on September 1st. It was open from September 1st to October 15th. We held a public hearing in person, October 9th in Brookings. Justin presented to the city council at a meeting that they had in person. We received 74 written public comments and 20 people spoke at the public hearing. The public comments were significantly in support of the rule change. Everyone who spoke at the public hearing supported the rule change. The Brookings City Council listened. At their initial city council meeting, Justin just provided information about the proposed rule change and asked for their input. They then held a council work session and their staff asked for other cities that had a prohibition, what their experience was, and provided information to the councilors. The council then at the following meeting voted 5-0 in support of a prohibition. So generally, over 90% of the comments were in support of prohibiting camping along the ocean shore. The folks who were in support cited public health concerns and safety, lack of public access to the ocean shore, and concern about environmental damage and impact on local residents. Those who were concerned about having a closure were concerned about the impact on enforcement or the ability for staff to enforce some of the concerns that were identified in the comments with current rules. And then there was a suggestion that potentially we could have a permit system to allow camping. So after hearing the public comments, we as staff are proposing that we move forward with a closure, that there is the potential to improve recreational access and safety and protect coastal resources and continue our partnerships with local law enforcement regarding enforcement issues for this and other ocean shore issues. Justin, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, Katie, I think you covered it all very well.
So we can take questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner Grassi.
So back up a slide, would you? So your last bullet leads me to believe that local law enforcement is going to help enforce this restriction. Is that right?
Do you want to answer that?
I can speak to that, Katie. So currently the city police department is, and the city council is not interested in exploring a parallel ordinance, but we do work hand in hand with them in this area. And so we would continue to still have that relationship, as well as if we do have higher escalated contacts that we need to call in support from our law enforcement partners, we would be contacting Oregon State Police as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cribbins.
So if this is passed today, does it take effect immediately? Or- No, I really was curious. And then about how does the signage?
Yeah.
She has plans to.
I need to change my weekend plans, exactly.
It would be effective upon filing with the Secretary of State.
Okay, and then we provide the signage to notify people of the change?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, so it was just a logistical question.
Yeah, yeah.
I have some comments.
I just want to thank you for this last page that shows the entire
Yeah.
coastline, which gives incredible perspective to this.
Yeah.
That's the most helpful thing here is what's the rest of the coast look like, and we can see what it looks like.
Yeah, and I think this makes me sad. It makes me sad because it's such a piecemealed approach to dealing with a bigger problem that's become more prominent in our state. And it's not how I grew up when I was growing up in Coos Bay, and we'd camp out on the beach and just roll out there, and it was enjoyable and safe and fun. And we've changed, and it has changed. And I understand that these communities are dealing with a real problem, and trash and safety issues are a real concern, but this long-term impact of restricted access to the general public is also something that's hard to roll back. And I do think it would be maybe a nice approach to look at a permitting system across the entire coastline where, you know, responsible folks who do want to have access and do this are still allowed to in a safe way, but we're addressing the issue that these communities face too. So I don't know how if we want to think about that in the future as a commission, but I'm sad that we're here. So with that, are there any other comments, or can I guess entertain a motion?
I could move approval. They're adding Brookings to the list of cities where camping on ocean shore is prohibited by rule.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting amendments to OAR 736-030-0020, adding Brookings to the list of cities where camping is prohibited on the ocean shore within city limits, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved. All right. Moving on to 9C. This is Silver Falls Smith Creek Village Temporary Rule.
So Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with 9C, the request to adopt temporary rules for Silver Falls Smith Creek Village.
And good afternoon, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, Guy Rodrigue, Valley Region Director with Oregon State Parks.
So background, and you'll note why Guy is here to help answer any technical questions. Smith Creek Village has been under a concession contract with the current contractor since 2021. That contract expired on October 31st, 2024. The new contract has not been signed, but is anticipated within the next few months. The department would like to honor the current reservations, but we need temporary rules in order to implement fees that the current reservation holders are expecting. So under the statute for temporary rules, it's necessary to adopt them to prevent cancellation of reservations for events that are already scheduled. And we assert that we can do the temporary rules because it's in the interest of current reservation holders and those who may desire to utilize the facilities during the period between contracts to act promptly to enact the temporary rate ranges for facility types that are not currently within the agency's rules. So this is the temporary rule language. It creates a new number within the current rule to put the Silver Falls Smith Creek Village Lodge and Conference facilities, the cottages, lodges, tiny cabins, and ranches. And the rate ranges are there because they have a different range for fall and winter. These rules would be in place for up to 180 days. So that would get us into June. Not that we anticipate needing it for that long, but it would provide that opportunity. So that is the request. Are there questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Dewar.
Well, I would actually, in light of all of the issues that have been brought forward by Katie, on this issue, I'd like to make the motion that we adopt the amendments to OAR 736-015-0040.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Dewar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ooh, Commissioner Cribbins. We're gonna go with Commissioner Cribbins. Sorry. All right. There are no further questions or comments? All those in favor of amending OAR, I'm not going to say it again. It was already said. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. All right, hearing none, so approved. Thank you,
I was
Katie.
hoping you were gonna say no.
Guy. The last thing, we have reports, but we don't need to go through those. I think we are looking at our commission calendar for 2025. Which should be in front of you or in your book somewhere. And take a look at those dates, and nobody has concerns about any of them.
Isn't February gonna be Zoom?
It will be.
Yes,
Zoom.
it'll be virtual.
But it will be 2 days.
There'll be a workshop day and a business. Most likely. We haven't planned it yet to see what's on the agenda, but most likely.
Yeah, and as you'll recall, we've moved the February meetings to virtual because of weather. Typically
Yeah.
tends to snow in February, so it makes it hard for us to get places.
And I guess the only caveat I would have is that depending on whether or not we get replacement
Yeah.
for 3 of you, we may have to revisit the dates because 3 new people may have different concerns. But as long as you don't have major concerns currently, if you get to stay.
So officially, when do the terms of a couple of us on?
April. We don't really end until you leave. We have a year in place, so we can continue until okay.
So I thought they would start early, 2-4 years.
It's always.
So just because Steve said so, doesn't necessarily make it true. I've told him. Yeah. So I can ask, and don't affect anybody, but what's the hang up? Is it legislation? Is it the governor's office? Is it? Oh.
You're not the only confirmations moving forward.
Okay.
And so so it depends, right? Like yours are easy, some are not. So it just depends when the governor's office has the ability to move them through with the legislative branch.
You're gonna miss us.
Without a doubt, this has been really fun most of the time. And I've certainly enjoyed it, being here. But there's a point in my life I want to move on, and I'm there.
Yeah.
We're trying really hard. I do promise that.
Well, look at your travel calendar and let us know if we need to amend any of these dates.
I don't want to compare calendars. That's one of my issues.
I'm not saying my goodbyes yet. I'm planning to. I'll be around for a while.
Let's vote on it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not so concerned about it today, but Denise is freaking out because she wants to know the location. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we should probably vote just so we can.
Okay.
Right, with
Okay.
subject to change, but.
All those in favor, or I guess I need a motion.
I move to approve
Approve
the
commission planning.
commission meeting or the planning calendar. 2025 draft planning calendar.
I'll
All right.
second.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi and Commissioner Cribbins. All right, all those in favor of approving the draft planning calendar for 2025, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none. Your draft calendar is approved. Denise. Thank you all, staff, for your amazing support to make all this happen, particularly our tech guys who are like, with that. It's not easy, setting up a whole room or getting this going with a bunch of different folks on different computers. So thank you very much. And we're adjourned. So we'll see